Well,
Well. Hello, everybody.
Hello, everybody. Hi.
Very nice to see you all.
Very nice indeed.
This is Elena.
Hi, this is Nancy.
And we invited you for a long time now to join us at Humanize and Data Natives.
Yes.
So welcome. We are here in Berlin. It is a beautiful day. It is sunny in Berlin, gorgeous. And we know you are all over the world. We are streaming this event globally. We know that there are so many people from around the world. Thank you so much for joining us today, dear friends of Data Natives and Humanize. Now, this is it. I can tell you in full confidence that this is going to be the best forum on AI that you have seen lately. And that is because we worked diligently to really come up with fantastic content, fantastic speakers, which you have seen already over social media and on our websites, and also with great insights and action items. It is really important to let you know we made it a short format. It's going to be for the next 3 hours. We have 12 speakers, and you will see diversity in action. 50% of the speakers are female, 50% are male, highly diverse backgrounds, exactly as we like it for this very complex space, which is artificial intelligence. Now, I love this quote by Friedrich Dürrenmatt. He is Swiss. And why we chose a Swiss author is because basically the whole base for artificial intelligence, the internet itself, was created in Switzerland at the CERN. And as you know, DARPA was the one who supported the creation of the ARPANET back in the day. And that was the first wide area packed switching network. And basically, that was really the basis for what we see today. And they did invest a lot in speech recognition back in the day and signal processing, including parts of the famous Shaky, the robot. Now, DARPA is a Defense Advanced Research Project Agency and is a research agency and development agency of the US Department of Defense, responsible for the development of emerging technologies, and that for use for the military. Most of the technological advances, if not all of them, that we are using today, starting with the most obvious one, the GPS, have started in the military. And that brings us to the NATO. Defense and military are transforming, and only through innovation they can retain their edge. And from time to time, humanity has to face extraordinary circumstances. One of those times is now, but even this pandemic will pass, and we will come out stronger and more creative than ever. It is my privilege to welcome our amazing partners, Data Natives, We Are Developers, Wamenshi Company, as many, many others who are helping us to make this event wonderful, and also the 12 speakers that you will be seeing in a second and that will be your hosts for the next 3 hours. This forum is not only about tech. This is really more about humanity, mindset, and actions, because these problems which artificial intelligence is posing, the challenges, the opportunity, the value propositions can only be created by the whole humanity. In that spirit, the opening and the closing keynotes will be done by two people very dear to my heart, Gretchen O'Hara, Vice President for Artificial Intelligence and Sustainability at Microsoft USA, and the closing keynote by Andrea Martin, the leader of the IBM IoT Watson Center in Munich and a distinguished engineer at IBM. After Gretchen, you'll hear from Mircea Geoana, Deputy Secretary General of the NATO. Mircea is a very dear friend, and you will see very important points he's going to make around NATO and the AI. I'm proud to say Mircea is from Romania. So is Elena, half Romanian, half Greek. And Mircea, among his very many special accomplishments in his life, he basically ran for president in Romania in 2009. After Gretchen and Mircea, you will hear from me about the 3 elements of success for AI impact. This is the work that we've done at Humanize over the last 2 years. And then we have a discussion, a panel with expert speakers that are, again, from very diverse backgrounds, and a moderator that is a gem in itself. Rüdiger Lenz, the CEO of the Aspen Institute, Germany. After the panel discussion, you will have the opportunity to ask your own questions, so please engage with us, stay with us, ask questions. That will be right after the panel conversation. So with that, special thanks, and I want to say this event won't be possible without the hard work and dedication of data natives. Elena Pugia, the founder of Data Natives, Evgenia Panova, Helen Schwerin, and James Watkins. Thank you guys for making this possible. And Elena, please give us some background on Data Natives now.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for this collaboration, Nancy, and for this wonderful introduction, and for the content of putting it all together. Very thoroughly thoughtful, and actually also with a concept in mind, bringing all these beautiful worlds from the ancient times, the 20th century, and now, and how we're continuing with the future of AI, that we need to take it back to humanity. So the creators, Nancy pretty much being the backbone of all the content, and here us with the Data Natives platform, inviting our audience as well, and producing the event. As you can see here, me and Nancy in this slide. Please roll out the next one so I can actually tell you a little bit about Data Natives. So Data Natives, we were founded in 2015 to bring together a community exactly at the boom of data science, an intersection between data science, business, and policymaking. And Data Natives has a community of more than 80,000 data scientists that we bring together either to learn through our platform, through the content that we put out, and to meet with each other, to co-create. That's why we do a lot of hackathons. We have tech hubs. We have presence in 50 plus tech hubs around the world. One of them actually in Cluj-Napoca, one of them here in Berlin. And every year we also do a big conference. Next slide, please. For this year, actually, because of the situation with the COVID-19, we decided to do everything online, which is why actually even in this event, it's only me and Nancy in the same space in the studio, but everything else is happening online, and you are managing to tune in virtually. So we wanted to give our audience a much more thorough and timely interaction. So instead of doing a one event, given that online takes a little bit more time, I think, for people to feel comfortable and to build relationships, we decided to offer a hackathon and a demo day, which happened. It was in September, and we had 12 people pitching last weekend, and three awards, one including from Bayer. Now we're doing the open forums, and this special edition is together with Humanize and Nancy Nemes. And then we're also doing a couple more forums, and we're finishing up with the conference, which is our signature event, our flagship event, which is taking place in November from the 18th till the 20th. And you can join as well online. Next slide, please. So actually, this is about it. I think we're even a little bit early. This is the information about the conference, and it's happening between the 18th to the 20th. So tune in. We have 5 minutes. We can go on a mini break.
Well, then, I would say really, what about I would like to really mention all the partners beyond, because we worked very hard with the closest partners, you guys. We also want to thank everyone who is live streaming this globally right now. So really, Women in AI, amazing partnership with Women in AI, with Victoria, as well as Ashvari, and really amazing collaboration. So that's really important. AI Austria with Clemens, Dennis Rothman is streaming from Paris right now, and the many more partners. I want to thank in particular also Wamenshi Company, Cezar Kaluski in Romania. You guys did an amazing job. Thank you for the Romanian audience, for the German and Austrian, and everyone around the world who is really tuning in today. So I would say we get started now. If we want to listen first to the opening keynote by Gretchen, and then we will immediately turn over to the NATO, so you can see what Mircea has prepared for us, after which we will probably go into the panel discussion after my keynote. And so hopefully if you need a break, you can always raise your hand. But we figured the 3 hours we'll probably be able to move on. But we also open to make it as best as it can be for our wonderful audience.
Thank you, Nancy. Exactly. I'm really looking forward to the wonderful content prepared by you today. So we have 3 minutes. If you guys want to pick up a bottle of water or
Of wine.
a wine, or it depends like how early you are or what time zone you're in, we can do a 3-minute break, and then as soon as that's finishing, you will hear from Gretchen and what she's been working on from her position very, very high up in Microsoft, specifically working with AI and sustainability. So can't wait.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Including our customers, partners, government, and the Hello, I'm Gretchen O'Hara, Vice President of AI and Sustainability Strategy here at Microsoft, and a new team that I lead as part of our recently formed Chief Digital Office in the US. The goal of this new team is really to make the market in a holistic and inclusive way to help us raise the tide for everyone, including our customers, partners, government, and the communities where we live and operate. We do this with a focus on emerging technologies and democratizing access to these, such as artificial intelligence, and the emerging needs such as sustainability, and especially closing the digital divide. What is the most exciting is how we work not only helps Microsoft meet its goals of empowering every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more, but it aligns to the United Nations SDG goals. And all of this can be accelerated with artificial intelligence. I am excited to be here with you today to open up the Humanize AI Forum, as I'm fiercely passionate about the technology and all the possibilities it brings to bear, especially when we put diversity and inclusion at the very forefront. The lack of the diversity and inclusion I was seeing encouraged me to establish Women in Cloud, along with women who are on the journey similar to mine. Women in Cloud is a community-led economic development organization that has a massive mission. It's a mission to take action with global leaders, corporations, and policymakers to help women entrepreneurs create 1 billion in economic access and opportunity by 2030. Now, how does this all get connected with AI? We live in an amazing time. Technology is changing almost every aspect of our lives at breathtaking speed. Advances in medicine, education, communication, and productivity has increased life expectancy globally and has lifted millions out of poverty. The ability to connect to people and information instantly is so common now, it's just the beginning of an era of even more profound transformation. We're living in a time of monumental change. And as the cloud becomes ubiquitous, it's literally rewriting entire industries. So moving forward, if we're not thoughtful, we risk creating more bias in the system if we are not purposeful in including diverse and perspective in our thought. So what is artificial intelligence? What is AI? It's really defined as the capability of machine to imitate human behavior, or technology that can perceive, it can learn, it can reason to extend the capabilities of people and organizations. Artificial intelligence, or AI, goes by a lot of different names: expert systems, data mining, predictive analytics, machine learning, deep learning, neural networks, genetic algorithms, and deep learning. But really, AI is an umbrella term to describe a set of tools and approaches to achieving artificial general intelligence. There is a seismic shift that's happening right now. Ubiquitous access to cloud computing, everything as a service, and changing customer expectations are driving traditional companies to essentially rethink business as usual. Every company is now a data company. But this shift will result in every company now becoming an AI company. And we need to think about how we do this. There's currently 3 trends in AI today. The first is at AI scale, and we've seen extraordinary growth in the size and complexity of AI models over the past few years. With the latest advancements in algorithms and computing, we're now able to really exponentially increase the size of these models, going from millions to billions in parameters. In order to scale AI in the organization, you need to be ready to have a foster AI-ready culture. An AI-ready culture encourages continuous learning through the growth mindset. It taps into creativity and diversity of thought in your teams, not just technical roles. It starts with the data at the center of all decision-making. And then we think about autonomous systems. From automation to autonomous systems, these are the next wave of innovation, bringing intelligence to machines so they can sense and respond to dynamically changing environment. Autonomous systems is an area that has taken an even higher sense of urgency, especially in the context of COVID. We're seeing customers looking to innovate faster, wanting to quickly enable contactless scenarios like the autonomous navigation of sanitizing robots, self-calibrating machines to avoid delays in operations, or autonomously controlling the safety of food processing. And last, AI for everyone. As governments and businesses accelerate their investments in AI and work on developing AI skills and talents to support rapidly expanding AI ecosystems, AI is also increasingly being used to create new opportunities to improve our education, our healthcare, address poverty, and achieve a more sustainable future for all. The pandemic has quickly accelerated the rate of innovation that meets the needs of rapidly changing our customers. And we have culturally made a shift to lead with empathy when we're putting AI into action by making it meaningful, empowering everyone, and acting responsibly. And that is our Microsoft AI approach. At Microsoft, we've identified these 6 ethical values to guide the cross-disciplinary development and use of artificial intelligence today. We've made security and privacy a top priority by helping ensure organizations remain compliant with regulations such as GDPR, and thanks to things like Windows Defender Advanced Threat Protection and Office 365 Advanced Threat Protection, our data, your data, is protected. And we've committed to promoting fairness by attracting a diverse pool of AI talent, developing analytical techniques to detect and eliminate bias, and leveraging human review and domain expertise. And now we're working to ensure that our products maintain a high standard of reliability and safety by evaluating training data, testing extensively with user feedback loops, monitoring ongoing performance, and designing in anticipation of unexpected circumstances. We pursue inclusivity by using inclusive design practices to address potential barriers that could unintentionally exclude people, enhancing opportunities for those with disabilities, and designing with emotional intelligence in mind. Our commitment to transparency means we believe people should understand how these decisions are being made. We strive to provide contextual explanations of our AI processes, and we make it easier to raise awareness for potential bias, errors, and unintended outcomes. And finally, we believe in creating accountability for how systems operate. We're ensuring that norms are observed during system design, and in our ongoing manner, that is there a role for internal review boards. Guided by these very important principles, we want to help every organization bring AI to their applications, business process, employees, and create an AI-ready culture. One of the biggest lessons we've learned is that you can't change a company by culture alone. You need to have a purpose-driven mission. And so we talk about our culture and our mission-driven purpose all the time. Our strategy is going to evolve, but that culture and purpose we hope is longstanding and needs to be longstanding for the long haul, as it's extremely important. The new Microsoft mission is simple, but it's not easy. It harkens back to our roots, the foundation of the company, and it's not a gimme mission. It's going to take enduring work. It's going to take innovation and determination to achieve, empowering every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more. Empowerment is a word that gets thrown around quite a bit in our industry today, but rarely do people take the time to really think about what it means. And so when we talk about empowering people, we mean that this is the right tools anyone can become anything. And that is our purpose-driven mission, is to empower everyone. This all comes back to Microsoft's approach on AI, making it meaningful, empowering everyone, and acting responsibly. It can be easy to forget that you're on a journey and not after a final destination. We're a few years in now, and we know we have a very long way to go. However, we are extremely optimistic about the progress we've made, and we're optimistic about the continuing room for the growth of the future and future generations. I think a key is really to stay humble. We don't declare victory. We continue to work every day. We're consistent in our approach day in and day out, and we celebrate the little milestones while certainly staying the course. And so in our efforts to democratize AI and ensure that we empower AI for all and AI for everyone, we must continue to focus on the human aspects of what AI can do to help everybody. Humanity is at the midst of an extraordinary awakening, and that every living thing on this earth is interconnected. The way we address our most significant challenges will impact the quality of life for all of us. Microsoft recently launched a new Human and AI series featuring passionate people from all walks of life who are using AI to transform our society and our world for the better. And these stories shine a light on discovering what is possible when big hearts, inspirational ideas, and innovative technologies converge. We know that technology alone doesn't change the world. People do. AI is a game-changing tool that enables people and organizations to solve complex social, health, and environmental challenges. And with the growing accessibility of AI, we're seeing this now in action. Humans accelerating meaningful innovation to improve lives and benefit the planet. And these are the stories of hope and human empowerment. An example is Dr. Bowman, PhD, associate professor at the Washington University in St. Louis. He's dedicated his life's work to understanding how proteins function, how insights could lead to new treatment for disease. As coronavirus became a pandemic, his lab decided to use their army of citizen scientists and collaborated with Microsoft AI for Health to run simulations on COVID-19 proteins to understand how they could spread to human cells in the body. Now, as they gain understanding on how the virus proteins work, researchers can accelerate the search for potential treatments, a crowdsourced network to accelerate COVID-19 discoveries. One of the things Microsoft is doing is featuring these individuals by using AI to change the world. We are continuing to build a campaign to highlight their innovation and their success. So we want to meet these AI heroes. So please visit aka.microsoft Humans and AI to see how a few innovative individuals are using AI to combat the virus on multiple fronts. This is all about connection. Let's connect, let's network, let's learn from each other. This takes a village. So thank you for tuning in today. I hope to continue this important AI conversation with all of you. Please enjoy the remainder of the conference and look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much.
I want to thank you, Gretchen O'Hara from Microsoft. It takes a village indeed, and you might have noticed that the speakers in this event are highly diverse. This is something that we keep saying for a while, and as you can see, we couldn't be more aligned in humans and AI as well as humanize, because it's really a technology that should help people and not harm people. And we will talk about that for the remainder of the day. After Gretchen, I would like to introduce the secretary, the Deputy Secretary General of the NATO, Mircea Geoana, who I have introduced briefly at the beginning. He's a prominent public figure in Romania and is working for the NATO since October 2019. Mircea has a distinguished domestic and international career. And as I mentioned in the introduction, among his many, many significant contributions, Mircea ran for the presidency of Romania in 2009. And I couldn't be more honored to have Mircea address us. I have to say, Gretchen is based out of Seattle, Washington, and Mircea is in Brussels. Both of them are traveling a lot, as you may know, so they had to send us a recorded session. It will be the case also for Mircea, but you will see that the messaging is highly, highly made for us and for this community. So if you are curious how NATO thinks about AI and why defense, military, cybersecurity are important, please stick with Mircea, who is going to be next.
Dear Nancy, thank you so much for inviting me here to speak to this forum. And like always, this is a wonderful initiative to bring together this broad community of very diverse individuals from public sector to private sector. And I'm so delighted to be joining you virtually today. Some of you may wonder why I so eagerly responded to Nancy's invitation. This is not only because of our long-lasting friendship, but also because of the unique composition of this remarkable group of yours. It is quite rare for a senior NATO official to address at the same time experts from all innovative areas, from business and technical leaders, philosophers, anthropologists, neuroscientists, doctors, artists, professors, researchers, NGO, and public sector leaders. Be surprised to hear a NATO official speak so passionately on the topic of artificial intelligence and on innovation more broadly. But AI matters to NATO as much as it matters to our societies and economies. AI will not only change the way we live our lives, but also the way we defend ourselves. And exploring the relationship between AI and the conduct of warfare is something that NATO has been grappling with in recent years. We are taking these technological advances very seriously because they impact so much on our security, and security is NATO's core job. For many centuries, security meant addressing threats on land and at sea, and in the last century, also in the air. But transformed by many recent advances in technology, threats today can take more shapes and come from multiple directions simultaneously. They come from close at hand or from very far away, from remote sources, from humans or from unmanned systems, from space or from cyberspace. These trends are enhanced by rapidly developing technologies such as AI. And keeping our 1 billion citizens safe requires NATO to tackle threats in the physical and virtual and digital worlds. This means that today we need to defend ourselves against bullets and bombs, but also against algorithms and bots. I'm proud to say that we are at the forefront of innovation, especially when it comes to innovating in the defense and security sector. Some of our allies, not least the United States, are already leading innovation in AI research and development. France, the UK, allocate significant resources to develop AI in the defense sector. And a growing number of other allies are making advances in this field as well. But also as an organization, NATO has the tools, the structures, and the people in place to foster innovation. To give you some examples, we have an innovation board at NATO which coordinates innovation efforts within the entire organization. I chair this board, and it brings together external experts to challenge our existing approaches and procedures to this new and emerging technology. There is also a dedicated team, an innovation unit at NATO and here in Brussels at our headquarters. And all this ecosystem of smart, talented, and dedicated people, all this helps NATO to better understand the implications of emerging and disruptive technologies like the AI that we are discussing today. Our strategic command, located in Norfolk, Virginia, Allied Command Transformation, is leading NATO's work on innovation and disruptive technologies, big data, artificial intelligence, robotics. We have a science and technology office that taps into an active network of about 5,000 people. They, in turn, can reach out to an extended network of 200,000 colleagues. This makes our science and technology network the world's largest collaborative research forum in the field of defense and security. The last example I want to mention today is the Office for Women, Peace and Security at NATO headquarters in Brussels. They are in the lead when it comes to finding innovative ways to mainstream gender across everything NATO does. As part of its work, the WPS team is looking into gender impact of new tech. As you are very well aware, AI tools can contribute to the deepening of inequalities based on inherent biases. It can also create tools that challenge biases and stereotypes to help advance gender equality and equality in a broader sense. NATO's ability to innovate is what has guaranteed our military superiority, including our technological edge, for the last 7 decades. But NATO and the West, the political West, may now be on the verge of a new Sputnik moment, moments where non-Western powers might actually overtake us. We are competing with authoritarian regimes that misuse and abuse of new technologies, including AI, to destabilize us and to manipulate and disrupt our free and democratic way of life. Last week, we just hosted and I chaired a North Atlantic Council meeting with the Executive Vice President of the European Commission, Margrethe Vestager, who's in charge of a Europe fit for the digital age, and also she's the Commissioner for Competition. And it was a very, very intense and useful exchange of views between NATO and the EU, because we need all the components of the political West, and NATO and the EU are two sides of the same coin, to focus on new technology and to make sure that we foster complementarity and cooperation between NATO and the EU, and also harness the talent that exists all over the democratic world. We must retain our technological edge and remain competitive in a more and more contested and competitive space. And for this, NATO needs to focus on the following. We need to keep investing in modern advanced technology, because we cannot fight tomorrow's threats with yesterday's tools. And to keep us safe, we must ensure that our own militaries can perform better and faster. We need to embrace the great opportunities that new technologies bring, both for our security and, of course, for our economic competitiveness, and also for the well-being of our citizens. We also need to ensure our societies and nations are resilient to these new challenges. These include data protection, impacts on labor markets, and protection from nefarious foreign investments that intellectually property theft, that is, there is a need to fight it in a far more comprehensive way. We need also to expand much more and more, with more courage, our partnership with the private sector, because private companies, from big tech to small startups, are driving technological innovation. So we want to work closely with them and further promote the strengthening of our vibrant innovation ecosystems. These needs to include universities and academics, as well as civil society. In doing so, we need to leverage the comparative advantage that NATO has as an alliance. Together, our 30 countries, our 30 allied nations, have an abundance of world-class academic institutions, the finest scientific researchers, amazingly creative startups, and yes, we have something that our competitors do not have, a free and open society, when talent can thrive, when people can speak up their minds, they can innovate, they can make progress, and can live fulfilled lives. And this is potential for even more synergies across the Euro-Atlantic area, from Silicon Valley to Estonia, and from the booming R&D and IT sector in Romania to Vancouver. This is some great talent that we can tap into, we should tap into, and making sure that allies, irrespective of the size or the level of development of their economies, remain competitive, and also have to make sure that we keep the most important glue, the fundamental underpinning of our alliance, our values: democracy, individual liberty, the rule of law, and human rights. I strongly believe that free, open, and democratic societies are far more conducive for innovation and progress than their opposites. As also as a Romanian who has lived almost half of my life under communist oppression, I know what I'm talking about, and we are taking freedom and liberty very seriously. To be true to our values, it is important to develop also international norms, rules and regulations for new technologies that would not stifle innovation, but will create a predictable environment for them to use their positive side for human advancement. We cannot allow anything and everything to happen in this space. Our competitors may not want to face up to the important ethical dimensions in their race to develop and deploy technologies. But we here at NATO, we do. And we are strongly committed to international laws, international humanitarian law. Now we are prepared to put on the table the hard ethical questions pertaining to emerging and disruptive technologies and discuss them with other stakeholders in an open mindset. And to conclude, just a few months ago, NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg launched a forward-looking reflection on NATO in the next decade. We name it NATO 2030. It is about making NATO stronger and prepared to tackle with the unexpected in a turbulent world. We have been the most successful alliance in human history. We need to continue to be doing that. And much of this unexpected, this kind of turbulence that we see all over us, comes from the rapid pace of technological change. Of course, from geopolitical change, but also from technological change. So we need to continue to adapt to this digital revolution. And we do this. We want to engage with people like you, with smart, superb intellectuals and experts like yourselves. Your knowledge, your experience, your ideas, and also your ethical drive on the application of AI in particular, and also its military application, are extremely valuable to us. And I hope that we can continue to engage together. With your help, we can be better prepared today for the digital challenges of tomorrow. And I encourage all my colleagues across the NATO enterprise to reach out to you. As I do today, we need to engage with you in a more systematic way. And I want you to encourage all of you to reach out to us, because you are knocking here on open doors. We are here to be part of that great ecosystem that keeps our democracy strong, our economies competitive, and our security unpenetrable. Thank you again, Nancy. Good luck with your great work. And I will be watching you and listening to you together with my colleagues here at the NATO headquarters in Brussels. Good luck.
Well, thank you so much, Mircea, and all the colleagues. Dragos, I know you are watching from the Brussels NATO headquarters. Thank you so much. This has been an amazing collaboration, and the messaging that Mircea is providing couldn't be a better headway into the next presentation that I would like to give you. Because as we are thinking about this space, the space of artificial intelligence, it is really a huge time now to really collaborate and get our heads together to make this world work well for everyone. So, you know, this was a very special moment. Having the NATO Deputy Secretary General speak to us is very unique, is very special. In my introduction, you have seen this quote. Let's take a look at the key elements of success to drive that AI impact. Now, I want to go back for a moment into this story. The Physicist is probably the best play written in 1961 by the Swiss writer Friedrich Dürrenmatt. It was informed by the Second World War and the many recent advances in science and nuclear technology. And that play deals with questions of scientific ethics and with humanity's ability to handle its intellectual responsibilities. It does address the ethical dilemma that arises when unscrupulous politicians gain access to scientific knowledge that has the potential to destroy the world. And so this play goes like this. Three physicists pretending to be insane voluntarily hospitalize themselves in an asylum, in a sanatorium, administered by a megalomaniacal psychiatrist by her name, Fräulein Dr. Mathilde von Zandt. The ethical physicist named Möbius, who was thinking that he was speaking with King Solomon, so he was known as King Solomon in the sanatorium, has basically incarcerated himself to prevent the world from obtaining and misusing his invention. The other two physicists, known in the sanatorium as Newton and Einstein, are really rival spies, one representing the East and the other one the West, each hoping to obtain Möbius' secret. This story makes us think about the approaches we currently see to artificial intelligence in the world. If you follow the media, you will see three approaches to AI that are easy to match to their regions of origin. AI for profit, AI for control, and AI for society. It's being said that the race in AI will be done between the USA and China, and that Europe has lost this race already. I personally fully disagree with this view. And I think this world can only be shaped to serve humanity if we collaborate and co-create, and not if we run for races. The world needs to seriously engage with China's AI development and truly understand what is going on. In Europe, Charles de Gaulle understood back in the 50s that if France wanted to create its own space for sovereign action in a world dominated by the US and the Soviet Union, it had to possess its own nuclear force. Artificial intelligence has become a similarly powerful resource that will determine the fate of nations in the times ahead. The only chance for not only France or Germany or Europe, but for the world to not become dependent on the geopolitical algorithms of others is to participate fully, unconditionally, and quickly in the development of AI. And if you would like to read an excellent report comparing China, the European Union, and the United States in terms of their relative standing in the AI, by examining 6 categories of metrics such as talent, research, development, adoption, data, and hardware, you can find that on datainnovation.org. Datainnovation.org. Now, why do we need to participate fully, unconditionally, and quickly in the development of AI? Because AI is everywhere. And it is becoming essential for today's times because it can solve complex problems, as we've heard from the speakers before, in an efficient way and also in multiple industries. And we've heard a lot about AI in robotics, in healthcare, in automotive, in the financial services sector, retail, or data security. Now, today, I would like to show you 3 surprising applications of artificial intelligence. Number 1, AI in astronomy. To solve complex universe problems, to understand the universe, how it works, its origins, the patterns, over time, as ground and space-based telescopes become more and more powerful and sensitive, and the data that they generate is increasing at an unmanageable rate, we will need more efficient ways to analyze it. And so exoplanet research is in a period known as the era of big data. And, new species are emerging. This is why I love it. I love the Darwinism as the new species emerging one of these is called exoplanet hunters, such as this guy called Kyle Pearson, who has developed a deep net, which is basically detecting possible planets around distant stars. So his AI searches for worlds outside our solar system. And one thing is for sure, the future of astronomy is data rich. But whether it will be humans or computer algorithms that discover the next Earth-like exoplanet, or perhaps even our species' next home, only time and the technology will tell. The second example today is AI in agriculture. Now, agriculture and farming are some of the oldest and most important professions in the world. Humanity has come a long way over the millennia in how we farm by introducing various new technologies over time. And so today, this industry is a $5 trillion industry. And it requires various resources, labor and money and time for driving best results. So AI helps yield healthier crops, helps control pests, helps monitor soil, organize data for farmers, help with the workload, and improves a wide range of agriculture-related tasks in the entire food supply chain. And you will see this happening more and more all the way to your food store around the corner. And this will drive significant productivity and efficiency as we get closer to the 8 billion humans on this planet. And finally, the third example I wanted to provide today is AI in education. So how about we would automate the administrative duties of teachers so that the teacher can have more time to teach and more freedom to provide understanding and adaptability, uniquely human capabilities where machines struggle. So for example, we could automate grading exams where multiple tests are involved. It's happening today in some of the most advanced education sectors in the world. So the vision for AI in education is one where teachers and machines work together for the best outcome for the students. And since the students of today will need to work in a future where AI is the reality, it's important that our educational system and our educational institutions expose students to and expose them to the technology and use the technology. And of course, many of you have seen this pandemic will accelerate all these developments. So given these multiple ways in which technology is touching human life, it is going to be all about finding a way to seize the opportunities of AI in a way that is human-centric, ethical, secure, and true to our core values. And I was very glad to hear the core values that the NATO stands for. And we will discuss this in a moment, and also during the panel discussion that will be led by Rudy Lenz. But first, I'd like to just show you very briefly what is the percentage of adoption in AI today. And you can see here across North America, China, and Europe, most advancements and most investments in AI go into what is called RPA, robotic process automation. And you can see Europe is really leading in that space. In machine learning, you can see North America is leading right now. And if you look at computer vision, you can see China is leading right now. This is going back to my point we've made in the beginning. You also may know that more and more people around the world are really interested in ways of using AI, but also many cases, you will just find simple software behind many projects labeled as AI today. So that is because the decision-making process for AI adoption is not yet differentiated enough. And both the employees and the leaders in those companies need to acquire the knowledge, the skill, and most importantly, the mindset to adopt this technology, and therefore to advance its developments. And this brings us basically to the real question that we should ask. And that is, what is your purpose for AI? We should have a clear purpose. The question is not whether AI affects our lives or the workplace. The real question is, are you ready for it? How will this transform? And how the whole transformation will look like for you, for your life, for your company, for your society, and for your community. You may wonder if machines will replace the human workforce, part of it or most of it, or what kind of hybrid collaboration models do we want to create. But you may have heard of the concept of singularity or a single entity, and in this case, we can take the robots as being the single entity. Today, I want to talk about the concept of multiplicity, which was created by Ken Goldberg, a professor of engineering at UC Berkeley. And basically, the general fear that machines will take over the workforce and replace humans as a whole is an example of singularity, or a workforce from one unit. So in this case, robots. Whereas multiplicity represents a hybrid workforce consisting of a diverse group of machines and people working together to achieve superior results. And together, they basically create more than what each group could achieve on their own. So in this audience, this is actually a very clear fact. And so this is something we already see in the real world, not just in Go games, but also, for example, in AI-driven recommendation engines, such as Netflix or Amazon recommendations or Facebook content, where they evaluate users' input and then predict and present more relevant content to the user. So people can focus actually on strategic or creative roles rather than doing these things manually, or focus on functions that relate to basic business decisions rather than execution. And who wouldn't want that? Now, the EQ is specific to humans and represent the soft skills that we should prioritize. And especially in our education programs, right brain thinking is something that machines can't do and will not be able to do in future. And as we think about all of this, why AI for good? You've heard this probably many times in the media. As you think about audacity, as you think about making big plans for AI or investing, should we or shouldn't we invest in AI? Or in fact, before you reject it at this stage, please make sure you have up-to-date information, because AI is really still in the very early stages of development. And there are many fun examples that are showing us how incipient this technology still is. So keeping the focus on the human contribution, because robots need humans. They rely on humans. A cognitive bot, for example, like Alexa, may be able to give you an answer to a question using the data and the rules that it has, but it can't tell you why it followed that rule. Or even that self-driving car that might have to choose who to save from an accident, its passenger or the pedestrian on the street, cannot justify its choice. This responsibility is and will always be ours. And this is why humans should drive for AI for good. And that means for transparency. It is not about the technology, nor about the money. It is really about the entire humankind. A hyper-rational mindset won't work alone. And so you need the emotional part, defining our own universe. And while technology is advancing rapidly, the diversity of those who design the algorithms is not so great. And one of the key things that we are working on also with this forum is really to understand people drive innovation, and diversity is key for the future of technology, because that future belongs to the end user. Machines and people should work together and harmonize. The 3 requirements as a summary of this for success in AI are: number 1, people; number 2, mindset goes together; and number 3, money, investment. So in order to lead, we have to use synergies, we have to create added value and humanize our ways, influence development and discover together. We know it's about skills, it's about talent, it's about jobs, it's about the mindset, embracing risk, diverse communities of mentorship and support, as well as smart regulation. So we need smart data and we need smart politics. With that, thank you so much for listening. And I would like to pass over to the fantastic panel discussion, which will be moderated by Rudy Lenz, who I see you. Hello, Rudy.
Hello, Nancy.
Hi.
Hi.
Oh, great to see you. I will just give over to you and the amazing panel that we are having here.
Thank you very much, Nancy. I think you did set the stage very eloquently. And thank you for putting this panel together, and also for letting us know how important transparency is in this discussion. And I think transparency will be one of our key issues, because we have put a very transparent panel together from all walks of life. Let me just say how pleased I am to be able to moderate this panel. I'm the director of the Aspen Institute in Germany, and we are very closely collaborating with Nancy. And thank you again for making this possible. We all know how important AI is. We all know that it is seen from different angles very differently. Some see it still as a threat. Some see it as something which is a game changer, and not only to the positive, but also to the negative, especially in the area of jobs creation or the loss of jobs. And then others see it as the solution of many of our problems, a vision of a better life, a vision where governance, health, science, and communication can be empowered. And you, if I'm allowed to refer to what we just have seen on your wheel, how many areas are affected by AI. And I think I'm very proud to be later on able to introduce a panel to you who all are coming from different angles, but all are related to our topic: AI, technology, humankind, control, transparency, politics, what have you. And I think the stage is set, and we all hope that our panel will help us to better understand the problems ahead, to enlighten our audience, whom I also would like to greet from here, and to give us a better understanding of the necessity of an interdisciplinary communication. And that's exactly what we are doing right now. A big task ahead, where keywords are the different aspects: ethics, social and political responsibility, regulation, deregulation, trust, trying to find collaborative models across borders, not trying to go for national solutions. And then last but not least, to find out how to foster, and this already has been touched upon, the well-being of human mankind, the well-being of humans, the well-being of us. And so far, I'm now going with no further ado to introduce the panel, but before, let me make some housekeeping remarks. As usual with those conferences, we are all sort of in an artificial room where we meet and try to sort of do best practice in communicating with each other. Because the conference is already pursuing, I don't have to tell you how Zoom is working. So make this one short. Let me just come to the panel as such. We would like to start with short introductory statements from each and anyone, then go for a panel discussion of about 30 minutes, and then give you all the audience the ability for another 30, 40 minutes of Q&As. And the more precise and the more shorter your questions are, the more we have a chance to include as many as possible. But now let's come to our panel. I will start introducing Catherine Schuller first. She's German by birth, national German data scientist and CEO of StatUp, which is a statistical consulting and data sciences service. She's considered to be one of the pioneering person in making statistics and data science an integral part in biology, medicine, astrophysics, finance, politics, etc. Thank you for Katharina joining us from Munich, I think, right?
Right. Thank you, Rüdiger, for this introduction.
Okay, next from Munich is Professor Dr. Klaus Diepold, a professor who has an interesting background. He is already illuminating sort of an artificial halo around his head. And thank you, Klaus, for being with us. He is a specialist on machine intelligence at the TU Munich, Technical University of Munich. His focus is on effective computing, moral machines, and the research in the field of multimedia signal processing. Thank you for sharing your academic and maybe also not so academic and tech approach to AI with us later. Thank you, Klaus, for being with us. And then we have an outstanding entrepreneur from Lithuania, to be exactly from Kaunas, a university city, Algirdas Stonis. He's an entrepreneur and the founder and CEO of Telesoftas, specialized in software, product engineering, and future tech and innovation. He's, amongst others, a senior specialist and advisor to the Ministry of Health in Lithuania. We'll come back to that one later, because he was advising the ministry throughout the Corona crisis. That will be very interesting to listen to. And then we have a very senior diplomat, my friend, sorry, Ambassador Darius Semaskam with us, who is a diplomat with a very interesting intellectual background, something which normally doesn't fit so easily together. He studied a combination of studying probability theory, it's a little bit complicated, and mathematical statistics, as well as political science. So coming from both fields, I think it will be very interesting to listen to your experience by combining the one with the other, and that one with politics and diplomacy in our age. Thank you, Darius, for being with us. Then we have Megan Schweiblem. She is an American by birth, and she is the COO, the Chief Operation Officer of Geactor, a company for education and elements of AI based in Helsinki. What is especially interesting about Megan is that she just launched and rolled out a project to building a revolutionary new approach for online education in partnership with world-class organizations, a course designed to empower all people to participate in a rapidly evolving globalized economy. She was also a successful tech entrepreneur in Helsinki, formerly a development executive at the London Business School, Cambridge University, and the Computer Science Department at Oxford. Thank you for being with us. I think it will be very interesting to learning from you how the launch and your project is sort of responded by the public, how it is rolled out, and what the goal of this project is. And last but not least, and I hope we have him now with us, is our friend from the US. It is John in New York. He is the founder of the Hackathon Project, a nonprofit organization for connecting happiness to action. You are very much, as I read, engaged in the ethic debate and trying to make sure that human well-being is one of the major goals of AI. So thank you, John, also for being with us. Let's start by first going to you, Katharina. We all have watched the Corona crisis unfold not only in Europe, but also worldwide. And AI and data played a major role in how to cope with that crisis. Can you tell us why this is so and how it already did help us to understand a new phenomena better than before? Katharina, you are on?
Yes.
Good.
Now I'm unmuted, and I also had to mute my phone because it rang all the day. I got lots of calls from journalists today because our chancellor, she said today that we might have about 19,000 new cases per day around Christmas. So I got many calls from the media to explain how she came to that forecast. And this is what happens to me all the time, because we as statisticians, we have been in some trouble because we were expected to do forecasts from the beginning of the crisis, but we did not have proper data. And to be honest, it's still not an optimal data situation. So the crisis shows that we need good data and that we need to understand what this data mean. So data literacy is the key competence, because we need to answer the question, what is good data in a crisis like this? And it is not only about how we measure the crisis, but also what we measure. Because obviously the crisis is not a purely medical or an epidemiological problem. It is also a social problem. It is an economic problem. It is a psychosocial problem, and it is an educational problem. And maybe it is even an ecological opportunity. But as we all know, you cannot manage what you cannot measure. So if we want to measure all the dimensions of the crisis, then these must be recognized as being relevant at all these dimensions. And this is more a question of attitude. It's more a question of thinking outside of the box. And it's not so much a matter of technical aspects or a matter of AI, because to be honest, nobody wants data, but everybody wants the answers that come from that data. But however, AI plays an important role. AI can be very helpful to organize the collection of data, the data cleaning. It can be helpful to detect potential errors, and also to link data from many different sources. AI can help us to do things right, but we as the human beings, we have to decide what is the right thing to do, and that is our job. Maybe we can say that we as humans, we are disruptive inside machines. We can question the meaning of data, but to be capable of that, we need data literacy, and that is what I work at, to increase data literacy in our society.
Thank you very much, Katharina. I think we come later on to the educational aspects, which what you raised with your question does very much target at. Klaus Munich, you are very much looking into the approaches how to deal with AI machine intelligence. How can machine intelligence help us, let's say, to cope with the disruptions Katharina was just describing, and avoid stress situations and avoid risks in the future? What is machine learning a tool for, which can help us to better cope with the challenges ahead?
Well, I guess it would be fair to say that one of the reasons why we see so many risks and so much concerns and disruption is that maybe there's a slightly exaggerated expectation of what AI might be good for and what it may accomplish in the future. I think we all agree that there's a lot of good things, maybe also not so good things empowered or supported by AI. But in the end, I would say, if you go back to the time of at the start of automation in all sorts of parts of life, where we have been embracing automation as a means to increase productivity, also to make a lot of jobs less painful and less cumbersome. All those aspects is just AI is just a continuation of that process. So we will be continuing and expecting that AI is a tool set that may help us to further automate and get more productivity and maybe also take off some burdened jobs. And as just Katharina was explaining, also giving us new insights and new means to understand the world in a better way by looking at data at different angles. And of course, so I think that the disruption it's maybe the speed of progress that is different. But if you were going back to teleport us back in time to the turn of the century, when people were talking about the threats and the danger of electrifying things, electricity coming into the picture for all sorts of applications, and it was killing people and it was dangerous, and people were much concerned about the use of electricity. And in the end, well, we all are on a daily basis completely natural interacting with electricity by now. So I think in the end of the day, it's not just a technical discussion. It's not just a discussion about progressing technology. It's what has been mentioned earlier before. It's an interaction game between politicians, regulators, but also between technologists and all people involved to make it human. So just as we have regulations how to deal with electricity, how to certify craftspeople, and have rules and settings for avoiding that people get hurt by the inappropriate use of electricity, I guess we'll be also having a similar task, maybe slightly bigger, if it comes to the use and the further development of AI. We also have to set up a network of institutions, of regulators, of technologists and everything to work together so that we have a network of interacting entities that make sure that AI is serving the purpose that we want for, and it's not basically misused, hurting people in an inappropriate and harmful way.
Thank you very much, Klaus. I think that already enlightens the problem. It's about the transformation process and how to manage the transformation process. And one of the keywords you just mentioned is the technology, which plays an important role in that process, and how to best use it. And coming and speaking about technology, I'm now going to Algirdas, because he's in a tech company which he founded in Lithuania, and which is very much on the forefront of sort of exploring new technologies, but making them sort of serve for the better good. And he also, as I already mentioned, is serving as a consultant to his health ministry. Tell me, as a practitioner, what you did do during the Corona crisis and how you helped to bring the technology into the political realm and made it work for the good purpose of steering the crisis, please.
I would absolutely agree with Katharina on this point. So hello, everybody. And I would say like a data quality is the biggest challenge at all times. Like basically, I was not the first on the list to be a consultant for the Lithuanian government. So it just happened that I was fastest to respond. And basically, I got contacted very early in March from the border department, from the mobility part of it, because what happened is that we had unknown amount of cases, and we didn't know which cases were imported, which were the domestic cases. And the data were totally in form that is not coherent. So we had people's data from the paper enquetes, we had forms in the internet, we had Excel sheets, so, and every single data value is different, even data types are different. So I got contacted by Ministry of Health with that urgent request for help. They said okay, we have data from 80,000 people, but it's not coherent. Please, can you figure out and do something? So in that case, of course, we needed to do the data crunch. And first of all, to have the one single format for the whole data. So this is why you need engineers to do the transformations from one data types to another data types. I think this one was the most pressing job that needed to be done really, really fast, to transform all the data from different sources into one format that can be analyzable and comprehensible by further analytics. So, but of course, for that, it's only step one. Then you need to have a proper infrastructure. You need to have a proper database where to store the data. You need to have data gathering agents in the appropriate systems. And you need to have all data in the cloud, and so it would be secure, and you need to kind of analyze it and add additional resources very quickly if you need. So that was a second job, to implement the basically data gathering systems where they were absent. First of all, find those places. Some were really unexpected, that, for example, national laboratories didn't have a single source of data. And then corona cases started to increase more, and we needed to do more tests. So private laboratories got involved into testing people, and you needed to get involved them as well. So it was quite a task, but as well to gather information from the Ministry of Health regarding the data from the hospitals, send the data to the police, and in the end, just to provide visibility of the situation to epidemiologists who were working every day. So this whole system had to be harmonized and included. And then, of course, to provide the reports and provide perform some analytics and provide some useful predictions and recommendations what to do with that data. So these were most pressing tasks what we had to face over first 3 months.
Algirdas, may I take over and sort of now lead over to Darius, because we have now two distinguished guests from Lithuania, and I'll take Lithuania sort of as showcase of the applied forces of AI and big data. I know Darius is always a great proponent of his country and its sort of leadership in this area. Darius, tell us how come that the Baltic states, especially Estonia and Lithuania, seem to be in the forefront of applying big data, AI into modern, let's say, governmental outreach, in technology outreach, and so on and so forth. And why are other countries lagging behind? Is it because you are so tech savvy, you are such a young nation, or is it because you are better educated? Questions which I would like you to answer, because the comparison of how come that there are such differences in Europe does play a certain role in how to look at AI. Please, Darius.
Well, thank you, Rudiger. Thank you for these kind words. Just a very short remark. As ambassador of Lithuania, I should immediately reject your notion of a kind of young nation, because we see recently, well, 10 years ago, we celebrated millennium of the name of the country. Well, actually, this historical memory is a short Soviet period, 50 years of occupation made a lot, and actually that also somehow contributes to the effort by the current Lithuanian generation to catch up with the West, with the Western partners within the EU, and and we are so far quite successful in that. And this means that, well, this forces us to try to always discuss how can we take over the best practice, and that is becoming part of the mentality, how to take over the best practice. So you mentioned Estonians, so we are always kind of very jealous about any achievement by Estonians, so we try not to lag behind. And that competition, either with Estonians or Latvians, it helps. It helps also that we are small entities, so the decision-making chain is very short. You mentioned tech savvy. Somehow it is the case. We have a lot of people that are tech savvy, and perhaps the fact that in some sectors, well, important sectors, we in transposing the EU regulation and values of let's say and principles promoted by the EU or promulgated as the core principles from which the build-up of the EU started, that is single strive to establish common market and moving to a fully functioning single market, that those principles have been implemented in Lithuania, and we are kind of with that respect more holy than the Holy See, and that creates a very competitive, very good environment for business, for entrepreneurship, for competition among different innovations, and at the same time acceptance of that. So perhaps a combination of all of that helped us really, and so with just to a bit move to the artificial intelligence, and to say what I wanted to say. I don't know if I have again a chance, that it is very important that within the EU we are very strict in not leaving an option or possibility for a fragmented market. We potentially have the big advantage, this common, huge, the biggest common market in terms of purchasing capacity, and we have to leave no space for protectionism. We have to leave no space for preferential treatment of one or another company that comes with certain innovation and naturally wants to limit others from entering the same space. So the function of the regulatory bodies is to really make sure that we have one single market without preferential treatment, without protectionism, which I think really did not. Well, as an embassy, we had to deal a bit with some aspects of protectionism here in Germany, and I think that is the aspect that is not being discussed. That why Germany was at some point lagging behind in terms of digital transformation, because some companies got preferential treatment. So we have to really try not to leave space for that when it comes to artificial intelligence.
Thank you, Darius. And coming from the European single market to the United States, we all know who is the big gorilla out there as far as digitalization is concerned, about the big platforms. Some already talk about a future digital divide between Europe and the US, but at the same time, the US is sort of confronted with the same problems, especially in the area of privacy, ethics, and how to deal with digital transformation. And so far, John, I'm very happy to have you here because you are the founder of the Hackathon Project. It's a non-profit organization for connecting, as I read it, connecting happiness to action. You have to explain us what that means, because we all know how much of importance it is about knowing about the direction which AI might take in the future, and about ethic questions which are not yet fully answered, just the opposite. So far, the floor is yours. Please explain us what you are thinking, what you are trying to achieve. Thank you, John, for being with us.
Well, my pleasure, and danke schön to you and to the Aspen Institute and to Nancy, and for the opportunity to be here. Well, one thing that's easy to start with is I'm already happy because of Klaus's background. I think, Klaus, you win on this background. No pressure to anyone else, but the background, I love your, yes, technically single. I just love that.
It's his halo.
Yeah, no, it looks great. So I can speak with two hats on. One is the hackathon mindset, and the other is I'm also on staff at IEEE, which is the world's largest technology association. And I'm honored that I got to go there. A lot of it's because of the work that I've done with my nonprofit. One thing is Katerina already touched on some things, which I'll start with. And also Klaus, along with your awesome Halo background. I love what you were saying. I think for me, one thing that's different about AI from other technologies and other human eras, first of all, AI is a whole suite of technologies. It's sort of like saying the internet, right? I think we'd all probably agree it can be machine learning. It can be inverse reinforcement learning. It can be data science. It's really so vast. It's kind of hard to say what AI doesn't touch. The thing about AI that is different, however, is how our data as humans is handled, meaning 10 years ago, all of human data wasn't necessarily tracked and then shared with the cloud, right? The cloud, kind of like electricity, I think it's a good analogy, because we all see a light when it's turned on, but that doesn't mean the electricity is not there when it's turned off. And that's the algorithms that are tracking us. And I'm really honored, by the way, Ambassador Samaska, I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, to learn more about Lithuania, also from Algirdas. And again, forgive me for my horrible pronunciation, but I am huge fans of work, especially from Estonia. So your colleagues in Estonia, Estonia, organizations like My Data, a fundamental aspect of any of these discussions is we in this community need to have privacy. And I'm going to call things like GDPR in the US, things like the California data protections. These privacy elements are critical. But privacy in one sense is law, right? Or regulation about how data needs to be protected. The other conversation, which I'm getting to the happiness stuff, but is our identity and our agency as humans is based on the need for parity. And when I say parity, one thing about Estonia, they've done beautifully with Helsinki and other places, is a project called X Road, which is simply about interoperability, both with the servers, the actual physical places where the data is stored, but also this mindset of what does interoperability mean? Well, for humans, that means we have to be able to access our data. We don't have to own it. And every one of these things I'm about to say is a benefit for businesses, for policymakers, and for innovation, but it is also essential for democracy. Here's what I mean. We are now coming into a time where the immersive web, augmented and virtual reality, it already exists in things like games, is becoming so pervasive. And interestingly, right now, we are all on a format. We're not in person with each other. We're in one sense seeing avatars of each other through a digital immersive reality. Well, right now, today, what we need is an algorithmic level terms and conditions for ourselves. This is not against business. This is about parity, right? When two systems have interoperability, they simply just need technology to go like this. Estonia has some amazing tools where citizens have access to their data. So if they go from one doctor to the next, they have a digital copy of that data they can share with those doctors. These are things that sound like common sense, but because of existing systems and structures and mindsets that I would call a status quo that needs to catch up with the technology. But now I'll also talk about some elephants in the room for well-being. We as a society have to start recognizing that the systems of things like economics that were set in place 70 years ago with the GDP, and this, believe me or not, I'm getting to well-being. Gross domestic product is an amazing backwards facing tool to understand financial productivity. It's great. But in isolation, if the key performance indicator for a business or a company or for an individual is, am I only happy or successful with excessive productivity, right? Exponential productivity, having goals, being productive, making profits, that's a given. But it's when we all start to make decisions, not just on making profits and making money, right? Because we got to do that, but saying, I'm now going to make all my decisions based on exponential growth. That means a lot of things. At an individual level, it means I won't feel happy today until I get here 5 years down the road. Well, I've studied positive psychology for years. My last 2 books focus on this. Universally, globally, well-being can't really start until we are grateful for what we have now, right? If the message is at an individual level, I can't be happy until the news flash, you're never going to be happy. But the underlying paradigm that we must as a society understand for our AI design, right? In terms of AI helping us with jobs and all those things, I couldn't agree more. The technologies are incredible, what they're doing for business, health, etc. But this is another elephant in the room. We as a society have to say, what are we optimizing for, right? That's the data science or engineering term. What are we optimizing for? And if when we build anything with regards to these amazing technologies, if underlying everything we build is the doors close every quarter for policymakers or business people or individuals, and we say all these great things, I want to create AI for good, I want it to do this, my intentions are good. Yep, let's just say yes, yes, yes. All those things are true. Everyone's intentions are good, they're good products. We're all trying to do good things, whether it's curing cancer or improving citizens' lives. However, if fundamentally the decisions that are made next come with these 5 words or 4 words, I always forget. Will we hit our numbers? Those are the 5 words that will destroy humanity. It's not the technology. It's will we hit our numbers? And if those numbers are only fiscal, and Katarina, I don't want to speak for you, but some of the things you said made me think this. We have to include the environment. We have to include human well-being. In the business world, it's just called the triple bottom line: people, planet, and profit. And in IEEE, for instance, we came out with a standard that is not prescriptive saying, here's how you do everything for everyone. It's saying, here are these data-driven indicator sets from around the world. The OECD's Better Life Index, the UN Sustainable Development Goals, in the US, the Social Progress Index, the World Health Organization. There's all this rich data that says, here's the environment, here's human well-being. When you're building these amazing tools, like the EU High-Level Experts Group, and by the way, I'll end on this. The EU High-Level Experts Group, if you read, because I have a lot of friends who are in the 50 people creating those principles, if you read what they actually say, and I can quote verbatim, I meant to have it up, but I would read from it if I did. AI is actually a tool, as they say in that first version of their document, that they were looking for feedback. It's a tool to achieve the end goals of human well-being and environmental sustainability, right? That's the KPI. So there, I'll just say that well-being is something we really have to say, why are we building these things? And what is the society that we want to build?
Thank you, John, for laying out the way to a vision of a better future and a better human mankind. And Megan, you are now coming into the play because you're at the moment living in a city, in a country, Helsinki in Finland, which is since years sort of leading the happiness index among nations.
Yes.
Maybe you can explain us how come, but foremost, I would like to know, how much can your launch project sort of contribute to what John just said? It's an educational process, not only of understanding the processes, but leading them, guiding them, and bringing people together and make them able to cope with the challenges. Please explain what your project is and what's about.
Yes, of course. So I work for a company called Reactor, which is actually a technology consultancy. So we help some of the world's top brands with digitization, with technology implementation for products and systems. And we actually paired up with the University of Helsinki in Finland and Professor Teemu Roos to come together and build a course on the basics of AI. And the shared goal there was to not only demystify AI, but to specifically target people who have been left outside of technology discussions. So to follow on from some of the points that have come before, it's precisely aimed at that, giving people the actual power in their hands, the agency that comes from a foundation of understanding. So if you think about the types of people that we're targeting here, we actually put together focus groups of these people, and we use some basic design thinking principles to think about how we can get these kind of otherwise intimidating and complex subjects across to people and actually in the hands of real people. So one of the things that we looked at was, the vast majority of online courses in any subject are sort of copy pastes of lecture theater environments. The courses are heavy and they take a semester or more, to complete, as the same as in a typical on-campus environment. And if you think about reaching people in the real world who are outside of academic settings to try to get any of these topics across, you need to understand that if they have full-time work, if they have families, the kind of devices that they actually have access to, the internet penetration that they have, their digital literacy and competency, any of these things are really, really important. So that's kind of where we came into taking this sort of material and putting it into a course that is, really, really friendly and approachable. We use the UI that feels like, the kind of apps that people are already using on their phone. It's very intuitive. The copywriting is very conversational. And what we actually came up with was a course on the basics of AI, splitting it, as also was mentioned earlier, into, the fact that AI is a tool. We talk about the different areas of AI sort of in increasing complexity. So the basics of an algorithm all the way up to, machine learning and then deep learning. What are the kinds of things that can happen here? What are the ingredients are required? And then in the last chapter, we bring all these things together in a chapter called implications. So people are able to say, now that they know the basics of what's going on and where these things can be applied, how does that actually impact me, my work, my personal life, my government, my interaction with people? And the goal here for us in trying to specifically include people who have typically left out of these conversations is actually the quote that we used in our messaging has been said several times today. So what we actually said was, if AI is going to be like electricity, meaning that it's going to impact all of our lives in ways that we're just now imagining, then it shouldn't be left in the hands of a few elite coders. That goes back to the agency equation, but the reason that diversity is so important is that if you understand how AI is actually built, the data in, data out, the people that are producing that data and the questions that they're asking. So if people have that basic premise, they need to know that they can understand then that it's not just following their data footprints, but it's also about transparency around AI means asking the right questions. Who is building these models? What questions are they asking? What is their aim? What is their objective? Exactly to the point earlier, what are they trying to optimize? Who benefits from this? And what does that mean for me? And what are the transactions that I'm making in the touch points in my daily life that impacts these areas and touch points? And if people can understand this at all levels, we've actually given talks as well at the EU Parliament and at the European Commission. We've worked with the European Commission now to get this course translated into every single official European language. We actually just launched Lithuania last week, actually, was our newest launch. We're going to have it in every single EU country and language by the end of this calendar year. It's going to be the first online course to do that. We also have over 530,000 students right now, and it's increasing all the time. And yet, with this number of students, we still have over 40% of our course takers as women, which is over double the percentage of every other computer science course online. So this goes back to the premise of not just having this information and wanting to get it out to people, but actually thinking really critically from a design thinking standpoint. How do you build something that is approachable for people? And then rather than just put it out on the internet and say, here it is, how do you actually get it into a grassroots movement? So that was the other major thing that I want to touch on. And the theme today, overarching, is this kind of public and private collaboration. Most people, when they think about elements of AI, if they've been exposed to it on their own, think that it was actually a government mandated project in Finland, because when we launched, we said that our challenge was to educate 1% of the Finnish population on the basics of AI. Those are the stories that the media picked up on, and that created the grassroots movement. But actually, it was the government who came involved after the fact, and we've now actually built on that model. So when we work with the European Commission to get this out in front of real people at different levels, what we're doing and what my team is doing now in Helsinki is we're working with every single country, forming partnerships with governments, civic organizations, universities, public libraries, anything that we can do to recreate the phenomenon that we've succeeded with in Finland, now over 3% of the population, on the ground locally for real people. So all of these kinds of ingredients come together for us, and we actually now, what some of the comments have been mentioning before as well, we recognize that we need to build on that with more specific knowledge. So next month, we're going to be launching the sequel course called Building AI, which again is going to completely, it's another area where we're aiming to lower the barrier to entry to these topics. So that course is really aimed at helping people think like a data scientist, because as AI starts to spread around society and people are being exposed to it in their various industries and daily lives, the idea of having a deep expertise in a certain area, say you're an engineer or a medical field or manufacturing, and then pairing that with a data science mindset is really going to be where the power and the catalysts start to take forward in the future. Again, making it as diverse as possible, getting it into as many hands as possible, and bringing real specific real life examples and helping people ask these tough questions.
Thank you, Megan. I saw a lot of nodding to what you said, and I think we all have to congratulate you to a great project, especially with your outreach, which is incredible, I think. Reaching out to the whole of the EU and with different languages and different sort of approaches is something which is very much needed, because we all know that education plays a critical role in the whole process. So thank you very much for that. And let me just direct and come back for a moment to Corona and direct one question to two persons, to Christina as well as to Klaus. I think it was Christina who said in what I read, that Corona already not only created an additional demand, but also additional chances and sort of further applications of AI in the whole process. So question to both of you, how much did Corona accelerate the process in which big data and especially AI had to be sort of worked into governmental decisions and the outlining of solutions to a huge problem? First, Christina, please. Katharina, sorry.
You mean me?
Yes, sorry, it's Katharina. Sorry, Katharina, and then Klaus, please.
Yeah, I think Corona has revealed how important it is to have a data strategy and an AI strategy, not only on a piece of paper, but implemented, because as we've seen in some countries, they have really had problems with collecting all the cases. I've heard that in Switzerland, they used fax machines to collect the records, and they couldn't count them anymore. So they had to weigh the paper to get an estimation of how many people were infected. But I think the Corona crisis not only offers a great opportunity for more AI, but again, and then I would like to come back to what you said, John, and what you said, Megan, to diversity. Because AI is a tool to optimize, but it's we as human beings who decide what we are optimizing for. And this is closely linked to the question of diversity. And I mean, we have all heard of algorithmic bias. And I really see an opportunity to measure and manage future crises in a better way if we create more diversity in the expert rounds and institutions that deal with such big problems like a crisis. And it's certainly not only about the perspective of women, but I think it's striking how few women are represented in key positions and are involved in strategies to deal with the crisis. And this in turn is reflected in the data that is available for decision makers. And this is also something that we can see now in the crisis, because more people are interested in the data, so we can see what data we have and what data we don't have. So let me give you an example. We have, as all the countries, we have a federal statistical office or national statistical office. Usually not so many people are interested in what they produce. But they started publishing a report with statistics on the COVID-19 pandemics. I think once or twice a month. So if we look at one of those issues, then we see that 11 pages report statistics on health issues like number of cases and deaths. 43 pages deal with the economy, with the labor market and companies. Only 2 pages deal with education. 1 single page deals with the environment. And for certain, this does not reflect proportionally what matters for society, but it is an ethical issue to consider what matters also for minorities or for those who speak in a more quiet voice, for example, families. And I do not only mention this because I am a mother of 4. So this is, as John said, this is essential for democracy to listen to those voices and to measure what is important for them.
Klaus, acceleration by Corona, and how much and in what direction, please?
I would not necessarily call it an acceleration, but it could probably contribute to a kind of a refocusing of efforts. So I can see, at least in the academic world, a lot of fooling around with AI on topics and problems that are no problems. They're just toy problems and things that are clean and easy and non-controversial, like, well, I'm using the very silly example of distinguishing pictures between dogs and cats. And if you have like a higher degree on this accomplishment, then you get a paper prize for this one. But the question is, what is it good for? It doesn't really matter. So in the end of the day, I think COVID is helping maybe young people in particular to refocus their effort in education and training to see, okay, we can do something. We could possibly try to contribute to those real world problems by maybe getting ourselves educated and doing a better job in the future and making a contribution in this direction. And the second thing is, I think it has been mentioned already by Katharina in her first statement, and that in the end of the day, it's also the data. And Algirdas was also stressing this. It's about the quality of the data and the availability of data. And let's say the not so sexy part of AI, this is cleaning up and making available and collecting and making some sense out of the data. Most effort in focus among the students as well is that they are wanted to have the latest, the coolest deep learning architecture and what you can do with a convolutional neural network of 256 layers and whatnot. And they start, I can sense, they start all of a sudden to see, okay, is that really the key point, or do we have to really start from the beginning, meaning where do the data come, where is the data coming from, what does it mean, what does it represent? And then the choice of algorithms and technologies is also important, but only on the second level. So I think that's the refocus that I can sense from young people in particular. Katharina mentioned also, and I think also Megan, the percentage, the participation of female students. I can sense, I'm teaching a class currently on machine intelligence and society, where we bring those two worlds together. And this is exactly where I have the highest percentage of female participants among all my engineering classes that I teach, because they're asking exactly the question, what is it good for? And what's the purpose? What are we optimizing for? They're asking those questions. And as I can now sense throughout the summer term, students are increasingly asking those questions all over the board. And we had a couple of projects running, for student projects on machine intelligence, and they're all picked projects to investigate, for instance, what's the impact of the COVID data? Can we make some statements about the environmental impact it may have? And I think this is, it's not accelerating, but I think in the long term, it will have an accelerating effect as more people are joining the quests on more meaningful questions than just fooling around and playing around with toy problems.
Thank you very much for your insights and also for the positive note on the young academics and students asking the right questions. And that is sort of a very positive sign, I think. Darius, I would like to ask you, because it has several times been mentioned, the necessity of the collaboration between the public and the private sector as well as politics. How can this sort of collaboration better be managed? Because it has something to do with first understanding what's on the agenda and then to take action. And how can this sort of not existing equilibrium being enhanced?
Well, actually, there are a lot of requests from our Association of Artificial Intelligence, I mean Lithuanian Association of Artificial Intelligence, to not to rush in regulating the sector and to really engage in comprehensive discussion with the players, with the actors in this field. And so there has to be a close cooperation, discussion, and an effort not to kind of prescribe or give preferential treatment to the opinion of one or another player. But there is no clear-cut recipe for that, and we are dealing now in Lithuania with quite important challenges. And for instance, we understand that opening of the data and making data collected in governmental institutions, governmental agencies, making it open is the key request from the market players. It was mentioned in this discussion numerously. But then we have not just bureaucratic resistance from a number of institutions, but we have also serious concerns or serious arguments that come from the side of those that care about cybersecurity. And we, as a country, score very high on cybersecurity performance index. We are among the first 4 countries having taken best of care of cybersecurity. But it looks like it has its own price, and some institutions read it in the way that hinders the opening of the data. There has to be a comprehensive dialogue, and perhaps first of all, a very general regulation, and when the problems occur, when we have the challenges, when we have very specific problems, then we look for ways how to solve them with the assistance of regulation.
Thank you, Darius. And I hand over to Agirdas because I'm asking you as a Lithuanian entrepreneur, are you satisfied with the framework in which you work and do your research? Please.
Megan, your education courses are starting really soon, aren't they? The Lithuanian program.
Yes, I think we just launched. So the Lithuanian one is brand new. Yeah.
So hopefully, it's a matter of education. People need to understand that disclosing the data is not the same as giving the security access to the FBI or Russian KGB. Disclosing the data is all about getting more getting more brains to analyze it. And it is in no way the personalized data that is being disclosed. It's the depersonalized data. So, but yes, this kind of premonitions or like old stereotypes about the data, the access, IT in general. Absolutely, we need to overcome it, and I think it would be overcome really, really soon, especially with help of Megan. So thank you for opening the courses in Lithuania. And I think it's really, every single country, every single community, I would say, have its own rules, and they're living by their own, basically, set of rules, by their own daily routines. And this kind of crises like COVID or whatever it is, it kind of shakes up, stirs up. So, for example, John mentioned the e-health system. So yes, we do have e-health system in Lithuania and Estonia. Yes, doctors can see the single medical record, but now we at least know that we know how to use that data, how to predict And soon, now we have so much good ideas, soon we will upgrade those e-health systems to totally remote medicine maybe in the future. So it's already coming, already I hear the talks that Lithuania want to start it. So it's going to be a next level. So yes, we stirred up, we had a little stress, a little like inconvenience, but it's good. This actually enabled us to change, enabled us to actually want to learn. For example, now a lot of Lithuanian government officials will go and learn about data science and AI, what it is for, and how they can benefit from it. So I think this was only positive push now for this for the decision-making process. So it would be say a little bit strange, but in a way, I am glad that Corona happened. And of course, not to say that it was a horrible disease and terrible pandemic in the world, but at least we managed to move and we managed to act, and now decisions are already being taken, and the new systems and new knowledge that we have, we're gonna improve a lot. So I'm happy for that.
Thank you, Algirdas. And let me put one final question to each and any one of you, and then hand it over to the audience. And the final question would be, and please give a short answer. We all sort of agreed in our debate till the very moment that there should be set of rules. You could name it differently, regulation or oversight or whatever, but we need rules for this transformation process and also for setting the goals, the right goals. But here's the question I would pose it first to John. Who should be the guardian of those rules? Who should set the standards? Is it politics? Is it a combination of public and politics? Who is setting those standards? And then look at the world, which is so, let's say, fractionized today that we then have different regions of different rules. How to cope with that one? And please try to stay within a short answer. John.
Sure, easy task.
Yes.
One thing is participatory design is critical. Again, democracy is two sides. If we just have a society that says this 10% of people create all the rules, and then we don't actually ask end users what their values are and honor them, then we're not actually being truthful. Secondly is, I will speak about standards. I work on staff at the IEEE Standards Association. The reason I like standards in general is it's not IEEE dictating, here's what happens. IEEE provides the platforms for consensus-driven standards, where those standards happen after consensus from a global body of people contributing. And there, I think our work on a project called Ethically Aligned Design, this massive document 700 people put together. One thing that we often don't talk about in ethics conversations is human rights. The first principle that our Ethically Aligned Design document talks about, which is all the people who created it said we have to think about this first, is making sure to honor human rights in all of our design.
Megan?
Yes, I mean, I would agree with everything being said there. You know, this is something that in terms of the certification and the value change and understanding all of these things, transparency is really what people are asking for here. And when you have something like machine learning, which is that black box, that people are saying that it's going to be impossible. But every other major industry has, third-party regulatory agencies, auditing systems. You can have these kinds of ethics certifications, which I think is really missing here. There's a big sense that AI is just completely the Wild West, particularly in environments outside of the EU, where we have a little bit more regulation about, the rights to privacy or the rights to be forgotten, and it creates anxiety in people. So when you talk to people about how they feel about this subject, they feel like, if somebody says that, robots are going to take your jobs, that, Facebook news feeds compromised the last election, you can't trust anything, there's bias everywhere, then you're kind of removing people. You're making people want to shut down. If people buy a coffee machine that has an IoT implemented on it, and we're telling them that it's spying on their arguments in their kitchens, people are going to start to shut down. So I think that one of the key things behind anti-fragility is getting people to actually feel comfortable in adopting these technologies. And that's about having a basic conversation with them so that they can actually understand what's going on here, how these systems need to be updated, and exactly the ethical certification is a fantastic idea because it kind of brings together all different areas of society. You're not siloing the private sector and government. You're actually bringing these together to say, where's the accountability here, and how can we create this transparency and trust with average citizens? Because if they don't adopt the technology, if they don't feel comfortable with it, then we're just spinning our wheels here, and there's no point in what we're doing if people just don't feel like comfortable in adopting things in the long term.
Thank you, Megan. And Katharina, what other elements do you think of if the transformation process come into mind?
I think it's really important, everything that has to do with open standards, open source, open educational resources, open content. I think we need to focus on that. This is also closely connected to transparency. And I also think it's important to have in mind what we mean when we talk about a competence in the 21st century, like a future skill or 21st century skill. So there is a framework that we also use for our data literacy framework to look at a competence from three perspectives. One is it's knowledge. One is the skills. But the third perspective, it's attitude, values, and ethics, and it has the same importance as the other two perspectives. And this is what I think will be very important if we want to go forward.
Thank you. Klaus, from your point of view, what can machine learning help us in achieving that goal? Setting standards as well, and try to make them not only understood, but also commonly agreed.
Yeah, I like John's perspective on standards. I've been spending 15 years of my life in MPEG and ISO standards. So creating interoperability was mentioned before. Open software, as Katharina just mentioned, openness, all those things, open standards are basic ingredients so that are necessary in order to achieve some AI that is in line with the democratic principles and that is capable of generating trust among the people who even don't necessarily have to be experts in one or the other of those fields. Only few people know exactly all the details, how a car works or how my electrical installation works at home and so on. But we still know there is a network that makes sure that this openness of those standards will be exercised to give me trust and comfort in using it. And I think the same needs to be happening in machine learning. The good thing is a lot of the speed and development over the past years is because, at least in the academic world, there's an incredible openness on what is next algorithms and software implementations. Things are shared among the participants, even in the academic world, and reaching into the corporate world as well. If you just consider the openness, even for big corporations, on how they contribute and enable people to participate. And I think that's an incredible, important thing, making everything that people have trust in the overwhelming good they will all pick out from advancements in AI. If there's no trust, as you said, they will drop it and they will not be using it and will not adopt it. And then it will be only a privilege for a very few, and that will be certainly against all our democratic principles. So I think that's how I see it. And machine learning is, I think, if we keep pushing it, it's moving in this direction to keep it open before the doors are closing behind corporate walls or islands of knowledge. And I must give credit to Megan. This is a wonderful project, and I'm a strong advocate also that we have to make sure that education is not falling behind. Exactly the opposite. We need a wide range of education on all levels. Which is also a value of our democratic principles.
Thank you, Klaus. And we always sort of expect decisions from politics. We are looking up to governments. We are looking up to members of parliament to steer us through crisis, to steer the direction of societies. But as far as the question of AI is concerned, is politics up to the task? Are they capable of doing it? And I would like to ask Darius that question, because you are serving a government. Now you're being answered not only about your government, but also about governments as a whole. Please unmute. Darius, please unmute. Are you?
Sorry.
Okay.
We have good examples, and we have, for instance, this general data protection regulation of the EU that has become quite some sort of standard in the world, and already more than 50 countries consult with European Commission on introduction of similar regulation. But it's quite strange for a government representative to express certain worries about over-regulation. But well, again, in defending my national position, I should actually mention one sector that was initially was not mentioned by Nancy at the beginning, where she presented a nice picture with the set of sectors where artificial intelligence potentially can bring much value added, and that sector was defense. And these days, defense for us, for Lithuania, is very important. And actually, we should not limit by our regulation the possibility to give a decent answer to, well, the bad guys, I mean, to potential aggressor. And so we should make sure that our defense structures are capable of using well, decent, adequate instruments. So values are very important, but we'll also be very careful in not well, taking tools away from possibility to defend our democracy, to defend our union, to defend our liberal democracy world. And of course, the big role here is for European Union, for Commission, for its initiatives, but please don't over-regulate.
So that was a clear pledge, and I think you would agree, Algirdas, but maybe after you heard all what has been said about how to steer the process, how to control it, how to sort of develop it in the right direction, do you have anything to add? What would be high on your wish list?
Yeah, of course, I would agree on the with all the opinions. Of course, the open data, that's number one. And my personal opinion regarding open data would be that AI, on the contrary, it helps for the data to be open. Actually, I don't know any single algorithm that actually deals with personal data. Again, the data it's all about recognizing the patterns. You don't need to find that it was Algirdas Tonis who have bought coffee machines to recognize that this coffee machine is popular. You just need to analyze the sales data for that. And as well, I think defense has already been using it for some time now. And there have already been some exceptions in regulation. Actually, defense can regulate itself. So already there is, I think John can confirm that in USA it's maybe it has been used for the first time in defense. So and I would maybe advocate for the commerce and for the entertainment. The artificial intelligence can as successfully create really, really entertaining maps for the multiplayer game, the same as predicting the sales, or the same as recognizing the terrain of the of the drone planes. So you can use it for a lot of things. And basically, I would say, like, until we have any problem, there is no problem. I say, like, okay, there was some errors. There is some models that are not correct and some data inputs that were not given properly, like well, the recent scandal regarding HR bots that got like conclusion that only male engineers are good to be recruited into the company. But that's, again, it's just a work in progress, and we can do it the beauty about the algorithms that you can teach it again and feed with data. And as much data you put in, the more, for example, if it's a neural net, the more iterations you have, the more cells you have, the more accurate the decision will be. So I think no need to regulate at all until we have some problem. When there is a problem, then we can deal with it.
Thank you, Algirdas. I think we heard you loud and clear, and I think thank you very much for also emphasizing the fun factor in AI, which is not to be underestimated. I think Hollywood will thank you for that, and all the pixel shops and the ones who are dealing with the fun factor will certainly underline and underwrite what you have been saying. I would now like to include what questions have been sort of put forward, and I would like to pose them to you at the panel. Here is one question which I would like to transfer and to forward to John. It says, AI field was solely technical realm. Now we are talking about the anti-fragility, bias, and ethics, which are non-technical issues. What kind of professions will be in demand in the field of AI in the next years to cope with the anti-fragility? It comes from data. Oh yeah, please, John, can you answer that?
Sure, great question, and thank you. I responded in the chat. We have another paper I'll post before we're done. We had a committee of business leaders from IBM and Google, and again, these are members, so they're volunteers in this capacity, and they have a paper focused on on ethics for business. And what they were saying, especially a friend of mine named Kathy Baxter from Salesforce, hiring right now, so many organizations are looking to hire for air quote AI skills, but along with the data scientists and the machine learning experts, what really are needed, and this comes from that paper and these experts, are anthropologists, sociologists, therapists, marketers, and especially diversity, right? Meaning diversity, not just women and men, but people of color, people of different ages. And again, we haven't used the word marginalization here. I think sometimes that can get people nervous because it's, again, there's a moral issue. In one sense, when you think about it, I'm left-handed. That means I'm marginalized in one very small, somewhat inconsequential way, but not from design, right? Design, you have to ask, who are the end users using this product? And I also want to point out every integration, as it were, of technology, of course, can be non-technical because it's in someone's house. So it's up to them to make the decision how they feel about it. That's why these cross disciplines are essential to help the data scientists and the policymakers, is simply because it's not their field of expertise for, say, like a piece of effective computing. And Algirdas, I'm mispronouncing your name again. Effective computing is really complex, but you must have people like therapists, et cetera, to say, how are things like, for instance, children, how are they interpreting these technologies? Otherwise, you will be making risk, right? And this is where legislation, I would only disagree in the sense of we actually need legislation, but maybe we can call it soft policy or soft governance to say, why build tools without cross-discipline expertise? Because if not, we will, without the due diligence that we need, be harming people, period.
Any contributions or add-ons to this question and answer, which already was given by John? Anyone?
I think for me, when we're exposed again and again to the people that we talk to, the biggest issue is that people feel like this isn't for them or that they can't understand it. Mathematics is seen as something that is a foreign language, and it's smarter than me. So either, and this is, people don't need to be, necessarily data scientists or machine learning engineers to understand these things. I think that one of the basic things that we do as humans when we want to explain something to someone else is storytelling. We use real life examples that everyone can relate to. So when we talk about, search algorithms, we can talk about the apps, the maps on your phone. We can explain the logic behind that. If you can pull up, you can explain generative adversarial networks and how that's the technology that underlines, what makes deepfakes possible, for instance, just by explaining to people in a basic level. They don't necessarily have to be practitioners, and you can use stories and connect them to the devices that they're using in their everyday lives, the transactions that they're making in their everyday lives, and you can break this down on that kind of a level. When it comes to building that trust for people and the transparency, so the question before about Facebook, what if we had organizations that answered these basic questions? Who is building the technology? What data are they using? How balanced is it? Where's it coming from? How is it weighted? So it's not just about genders and ethnicities and race. Is it weighted equally? Because this is what you're seeing again and again. There's so many studies that have come out. The UNESCO did a brilliant one called "I'd Blush If I Could" about the voice assistants that we have on our phones. So they used Siri, Google Assistant, all of these. And they found that when you have a bunch of engineers at these companies who are using web scraped open data, which is primarily, white American men, you're going to be getting things that are inherently biased. So when a woman would ask the same question to these things, it would be different. Yeah. So if there was a way that we could actually make this transparent and available to people on their level, that I think would make a big difference.
Thank you very much. I think Andrea Martin is waiting. Could you put her on camera? She wants to pose a question. Andrea, you're on, please. Go ahead.
I'm on, but I'm actually waiting and listening carefully because I'm the next one on the agenda. So please go on. Please go on.
Very much welcome. But nevertheless, I thought you were posing a question, but let me follow up on what just Megan said. It's a great example of how to take ownership of something you don't know much or not yet enough about. And Klaus, let me ask you, because you mentioned before how your students sort of reacted to Corona, and it opened up a new sort of horizon of questions. So how to take ownership of AI and machine learning? What tools you have already experienced you can work with?
Well, I have a class where I'm bringing together engineering students as much as political scientists students. And the political scientists, they are learning Python programming on a very simple level. We also teach them how to program certain machine intelligence tools. Not complicated stuff, just relatively straightforward, just to give them an impression and a feel that it's not so darn difficult to get something going. And if I have, let's say, I use any scikit-learn Python packages, that I can actually start implementing things without necessarily understanding all the bits and pieces that are running in those libraries. And I get a feel for it, how complicated it is, what's the capabilities, how difficult it is to make it work even on relatively simple problems, and how important it is to verify what you have been doing, to actually do verification very properly. And those things are the things that are the political scientists that are learning from this class. And the engineering students, they're also sitting, of course, most of them are much more versed in Python programming and getting the mastery of the mathematics, but all of a sudden, the political students are asking questions. So how could you do this and how could you do that? In particular, if it comes to diversity and discrimination, if you use the common tool sets and most prominently COMPAS data set and also other data sets, and you can start teaching the electrical engineering students to say, there is no silver bullet to solve the problem. This is something that you have to discuss with the society. What is the society? What is the goal that you want to achieve? And for each of those goals, you can find a machine learning solution for it, but you have to know what you want. And this you can't find by just looking a book into a textbook of machine intelligence. You have to talk to the people, and you have to, well, collectively work on it in order to come up with a solution that is acceptable for the majority of the people. And that is something and I think we have to teach our students as early as possible to appreciate the point of view and the competences and the skills another party brings to the story, and being able to communicate openly with each other, not just putting on the situation, I'm a machine intelligence or machine learning expert. What do you know? So you're incapable of telling me what to do. No, we have to really, we are like angels who have only one wing. We can only fly if we embrace each other. So that's the point here. I think that's important to make.
Klaus, I think you mentioned the most important thing. It's communication. It's talking to each other, trying to understand and to learn from each other. And I think that adds very elegantly to what Megan said. It's about the narrative. It's about storytelling. That has the strongest impact in every discussion, as we know. And I think you just made it very clear that's the way to go. But before I let you go, we have another 8 minutes before Andrea is on. So I would like to pose one last question to all of you, looking a little bit into the crystal ball, because as I mentioned in the very beginning, this is not only about trust, it's not only about technology, it's not only about how to experience and the complexity of the story, it's also about, do you have a positive outlook, do you have a negative outlook? And what's your impression on where we are and where we might be in 5 years from now? Is that something which can be explored and exploited to the positive and will move us forward? Or is it something which still you as practitioners and also as the ones doing the job have your concerns which are not yet met successfully? So that would be my last questions. I would like to start with Katharina, please.
Thank you. So my view is slightly optimistic. I think we will be in a situation where we really treat data as the oil of the 21st century. I mean, this is something which is often said, but nobody wants oil. We don't want oil in our garden. We want the product from oil, or the value that we get from oil. And the value is not fuel. The value is mobility. Or the value is something like freshness, if we think of packages, plastic packages for food. But there are also side effects of that production, production of value from oil. There is pollution of the air, pollution of the oceans. And this is something we have to keep in mind. It's exactly the same when we talk about data. If we do not want data, we want the value that we create from data, and that is better decisions. And I think that we can reach that point where data are really seen as the basis for better decisions, and not only for something like a ex post argument for what we have decided before, so that we really are open to what the data will tell us and how we can put them into context. This is my outlook.
Darius, your take on the question.
Well, just to combine it with the question that I see on the question panel, where Mr. Valentin Nemes asks, will we have in the future democratic and non-democratic artificial intelligence? And I think that we are already now these days trying to cope with this challenge. Well, we discuss how China uses the artificial intelligence to have overwhelming control of the population, and now we see that very competitive price the Chinese companies' technologies are being offered to our European, American markets, and that now we have to make a decision: do we allow this equipment to be sold and used for 5G or not? So will and we still perhaps don't have a clear-cut answer. Will this technology really allow China to establish supervision on our societies, on each and every individual in our societies? So well, basically, we need to really to have countering technology, countering artificial intelligence that would protect our liberal democracy and our values and our principles.
Thank you, Darius, for mentioning China, at least at the very last of our discussion, because I think this is the first discussion which I do on AI where it has been mentioned at the very end and not already at the very beginning. So, I mean, but I think we need to tackle that one separately sometime later at another opportunity, because it is the other big question, how to deal with China as a perpetrator, as a competitor, maybe also more than a competitor. Algirdas, you're on.
Well, I'm a dreamer and I'm an engineer. I like technical challenges. So at this case, I'm totally full to go beyond the machine learning and the data science as we have now and go to full-fledged self-aware AI. And one day we're going to have members of parliament who are actually robots, and we're going to have a president who is a robot. And we're going to have AIs and members of our society with voting rights, and maybe somebody will get married like normal people with artificial intelligence. I'm fully for that. You've seen my science fiction book collection. So great part of it is Isaac Asimov.
Algirdas, you're really ahead of the curve in any aspect. Thank you very much. Yeah. Megan, your take on the future.
You know, personally, I'm a humanities major in this panel, both in my bachelor's and my master's degree. So I, self-taught myself through various means to try to get to grips with these kinds of topics. It was sort of a baptism by fire working for the computer science department at Oxford, and my job there was to try to get philanthropic income. So I had to sort of translate what we were doing. And I, again and again, even coming to work in startups in machine learning here in Helsinki prior to joining Reactor in this role. So I really, really, truly believe in storytelling and just bringing basic transparency to people at the front of their user experience, and just telling them about what they're going to experience, and build those trusts and getting this into the hands of people that really need it, because they can understand it. We can understand it to the level that it's going to make a difference in our lives and build that agency, which is really what we're trying to grasp here. So it's just really, really excited. I'm very positive about the future in this space. We need to share stories and real life examples and put them in the hands of people.
Thank you for bringing us back in the human corral. John. John?
Pleasure.
Well, first of all, I want to party with Algirdas because I'm a huge science fiction fan. So any of those conversations, Philip K. Dick, I'm in. I guess where I would say I'm not disagreeing, so it's a yes and. Right now, today, I'm just a realist. The systems that society needs to deal with, to me, are not technologically the issue. And I want to make it positive. So this is a positive vision. Katerina said beautifully, right? And this happens all the time for me. I read so many policy documents, economics starts, and then on page 8, the environment and kids. That is the reverse. My vision is that every policy discussion begins with economics to the side, legislation to the side, until our kids and planet are taken care of. We are all living in countries where what did we wake up with this morning? I guarantee you, the first thing I looked at was what are the coronavirus cases in my area. That means caregivers need to be recognized, and they aren't literally recognized in GDP. The metrics that society is using to say we are successful are obviously failing. And this sounds negative, but I want to make it positive, right? In the States, California is on fire. It is biblical. And these conversations, as much as I love them, my positive vision is that all these amazing technologies are used first and foremost to say, are our kids safe? Is our health taken care of? Our mental health? And is the environment taken care of? Those actually have to be prioritized, because right now, if all the documents start with the economics, they end with the economics. And that's it. So I'm just being a realist. So my positive message is, why not regulate the snot out of stuff if it means what we're saying is we're prioritizing for society, our kids, and our planet. So these beautiful technologies, they are optimized to heal, to help, and to innovate, where innovation does not have to be defined only in economic or financial terms. That's my dream.
What a wonderful dream. Klaus, you are last. And tell us about you, how you think AI could help us on that positive assumptions and visions.
Well, I think, as Megan said, she has her major and her background in humanities. I think a lot of research has been going over the centuries to better understand how humans work. And if we were to use AI and machine learning to rebuild some of those notions of how humans work and how they think and how they're triggered, we can testify and we verify of those if those assumptions are true, even in sociology terms or in humanities terms. So I think my dream is that we can eventually start bits by bits and pieces, rebuild human behavior and study it and understand if our understanding of how humans work is correct. So basically, synthesis by analysis, we can prove and verify understanding how we think that humans are working, and we could probably mimic it. And I think in that sense, I would consider AI as a tool for research to better understand how humans operate and what they need and what they think and how they feel and what they need to be more happy. So I think that is it's a means for an end.
Thank you, Klaus. Those were the last words of this panel. And I have to thank every one of you because I think, at least myself, I feel enlightened. I feel encouraged to take the future questions on. And let me also say, we tried sort of to explain AI and to make it beneficial for the future of mankind. And at least I think we have worked all together for the benefits of a better understanding of the complexity. And because you all came from very different angles, I think that helped a lot. And now, Nancy, I give back to you. And again, a great thank you to you for having put this extraordinary panel together. Thank you to you. I very much enjoyed having had the pleasure and the honor to moderate this panel.
Thank you so much, Rudy. Oh my God, I feel happy. I just feel a big moment of happiness because of you and you people and human beings just being here with us. And I really am convinced that our audience can feel the human passion that goes from people that work with technology, people that work with politics, people that work in education, people that work in the academic space, and people that work in the economy, making money as well, such as Algirdas, who probably also has to think about monetary rewards, right? So all of us have to do that. We need to balance these various aspects. Thank you so much, Katarina, Algirdas, Darius, and John. And also thank you, Klaus and Megan. Enlightening and passionate. This day will be a historic day, at least for Human Eyes, because when I was coming up with this name, Human Eyes, I was making a lot of assumptions and trying to see if that's a good idea or not. So it feels like we are now speaking a very common language. I wish also, my dream is that every human being on this planet really can benefit from the good parts of this technology. And also it's our job to really educate and drive that awareness. Without further ado, I would like to introduce a very dear friend of mine, Andrea Martin, who will be doing our closing keynote. Andrea is a distinguished engineer. For those of you that work in large corporations such as IBM or others, you know that distinguished engineer is a very, very high mark. Andrea is also an amazing human being, also a supporter of my initiatives from day one, like probably all of you here, I think, at this point in this call. And so Andrea will take us just coming out of a very important meeting of the German government. So please stick with us. Andrea will be telling us what it will take to drive trust and why trust is really the most important aspect. So you will see some of the most amazing results that Andrea is going to tell us about. Andrea, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nancy. I'm trying to share my screen and I hope you can see it now. And you should see, talking about enlightenment, you should see the enlightened Watson Center in Munich that I have the pleasure to lead. And today, actually, I don't say hello from Munich, but I say hello from Berlin, actually the place where we would have met if we could have met in person. But now at least we can meet virtually, and thank you very much for the last at least 20 minutes that I could listen to to the really interesting panel discussion that you had on the agenda. So why Berlin? Nancy, you already mentioned it a little bit or hinted. Today we had a symposium for the Commission of ago, consisting of members of parliament, but also some experts to discuss the potential and also the risks of AI for Germany, for German society, for German businesses, for Germany as a nation. And today we had the symposium, which was held in a hybrid way, not completely virtual, but in a hybrid way, and that's why I'm in Berlin. And of course, ethics was also a part of the discussions, and also how we could use AI to work for the benefit of humans. So basically linking back to the panel that we just had. And in order to be a benefit for humans, I think that trust will be indeed vital in the next step of AI evolution. So let me jump here. So maybe just to level set, when I talk about AI, or if IBM talks about AI, thinking about humanity and that AI should support all of us to have a better future, then AI is rather augmented intelligence than artificial intelligence. So really want that AI is used to augment our jobs, to augment our lives so that we do our jobs better, our tasks better, that we gain new insights from loads of data. And in order to work, we define AI as mimicking our human thinking and the way how we take in information. And that means by understanding. Understanding means kind of reading text, looking at pictures, looking at videos, hearing sounds, and taking that in. Not like if you look a couple of years back when computers could only read structured data that was in databases or in other structured files, right? The second thing is actually that AI mimics human thinking by reasoning, taking a lot of data and drawing conclusions, right? That's what we typically do with all the information that we get. We come to findings, we draw conclusions, and then act. And AI mimics this, or AI functionality can mimic this reasoning process as well. Then, of course, learning, that's, I think, pretty clear. Machine learning, deep learning, that's some of the core technologies that belong to the overall AI family. And then last but not least is about interaction. I think someone mentioned chatbots and other bots of virtual assistants also in the panel discussion before. So that also uses AI technology. That's just, to level set. Now, looking at why it's so important to build trustworthy and ethical AI systems, I think there are a couple of reasons. And I would actually like to start from the back on this slide, because when we think of ethics, it's in principle about, figuring out what is right or wrong for a society, what we think is right or wrong within a society, and what are our duties and obligations within this framework, right? So it's definitely a societal imperative that we look at making AI more trustworthy and more ethical. The interesting thing here is that ethics and what is right and what is wrong may not be 100% the same across the world. And that makes it such a difficult or challenging question sometimes. Because also the legal systems are different across the world, but it's still a legal imperative that, for example, at least in my country, you cannot discriminate anyone, right? So we need to create AI solutions that don't discriminate. It's a legal imperative. And then, of course, it's also a business imperative. I saw that some of the chats talking about capitalism, but just to be honest, if we don't gain acceptance for AI solutions in society and in companies that should use or could use AI as a solution component, there's no business model for AI. Then all technology companies who create AI solutions and bring them to the market and try to sell them, if they don't create trustworthy and ethical AI so that it can be accepted, they will not sell anything. So it's also a business imperative. And last but not least, there's of course a lot of interesting research questions, not just from a technology perspective, but across all the disciplines, why it's so important and also so interesting to look at the topic of trustworthy AI. Interestingly enough, if you look at the 8 biggest trends in AI for this year, which is nearly over basically, but still, if you look at these 8 biggest trends, you will see, you know, from some of the topics or areas where we see that are trending in AI from an industry perspective, which was basically also part of the last couple of sentences or discussion points in the previous panel. It's in healthcare, it's in drug discovery. Actually, in Germany, I think 75% of people wish that AI and robotics would be used in care, in elderly care or in rehab and so on. You will see AI in manufacturing, but you also see when you look to the further right of the slide that you hopefully see, it's that explainability and trustworthiness and transparency is a very, very important trend in AI research and in AI business, which, by the way, goes very much together, in my point of view, also with what we also see here on this slide, the improved accuracy and efficiency of neural networks. Because that's still a big research topic, at least to my knowledge, that you can look into neural networks to explain where certain AI recommendations come from, but it's really very compute intensive or time consuming. So creating more efficiency in the neural networks also helps to add the explainability layer to these neural networks without losing too much performance. So these two, for me, also go together to a certain extent, because the better the neural networks become in terms of efficiency, the easier, if it's easy at all, it becomes to also make AI explainable. So you see, there are a couple of imperatives, from research to business to legal to societal imperatives, but it also goes well along with where the industry is heading towards AI in terms of the trends that we see. Now, going back a little bit in history, at least in IBM history, very short time frame actually going back in a company that's more than 100 years old. But when Ginny Rometty still was our CEO 3 years ago, or even almost 4 years ago, in January 2017 at the World Economic Forum, she was on an interview, a half-hour interview. And in that interview, she said, when you introduce powerful technologies into this world, and the interview was actually about AI, you have a responsibility that they are introduced in the right way. So from the, maybe not the very, very beginning, but very early in the time when AI solutions became really, really productive for businesses, we said, we have a responsibility. You cannot just throw a technology on the market and then see what happens. But if you introduce a powerful technology like AI that can change a lot of processes, the way how we collaborate, the way we come to conclusions and gain new research insights, then you have to make sure as best as you can that it's done in a responsible way. And at the same time, actually, on the same day when she gave this interview, she also introduced and published, both internally in IBM, but also externally, 3 principles that should be valid for the era of AI, so to say. And these principles are valid for all of our own developers and designers and those people who work on projects and implement AI solutions with our clients. But they're also published to the outside world in terms of IBM, right? To everyone. So you can read them on our website. The first principle is basically what I said at the very beginning. The purpose of AI should be to augment our intelligence and help us do our jobs better. The second one, and I think this is a very important one for companies like ours that do business with other businesses, with companies, not with the consumer market, is the question about data. The question about data, and also the question about the insights that you can gain from data. The question is, who do they belong to? And we are very clear and say, data and the insights that you gain from it, they belong to our clients, to the companies we work with, because it's their intellectual property and they should gain competitive advantage from it and no one else, right? So we will not use any of the data that we may use to help them come to new conclusions for our own business model, because we are not a data company, we are a technology company, right? So our business model is built on technology and services, but not on data. And the third principle, that's the one that kind of links to the ethics topic, is transparency. AI solutions should be as transparent and as explainable as possible. And this goes along also with establishing a so-called IBM AI Ethics Board, which is a centralized governance board with participants from all the different business units. And if I, as an IBMer, would like to, create a new AI feature in a product, or if I'm an IBMer in the services business and I want to start a project with a client on AI, I can access an assessment list and I can go through all the questions, and then I will see if my project is one that should better go through the AI Ethics Board and get approval. Right, and that's especially important, right? If it involves a lot of personal data, it's also especially important if you work with government authorities, especially if it goes to the defense and military. So all these projects go to this AI Ethics Board, and they may also decide to disapprove and reject a certain project, and then we wouldn't do it. So that's the kind of the principle and the governance foundation. But I think what's really, really important is that you don't only talk and write down nice words, but that you indeed do research on a couple of areas linked to transparency, and that in the end, you also implement them. And so very, very early, our research colleagues have started doing research on fairness and anti-bias, so that we look into the data sets to see, is there any bias in the data sets? Which would be quite natural, because let's be honest, all of us are biased in one way or the other. And actually, it helps us survive and take decisions very quickly. And if we train AI systems with the data that we generate, this data is kind of naturally biased. And if we just take the data that we have, we will most probably also create AI solutions that are biased. So we have to look into this and then apply countermeasures to ensure fairness. They looked into explainability, so how can I explain a single result, or how can I explain a whole machine learning model? And they looked at aspects like security, robustness, can a model be manipulated, yes or no, and of course ensuring it cannot, and also assurance in terms of traceability, where does the data come from, which are the data sources that I use in my AI solutions. And that's going on. But for me, one of the most important things is there are also solutions. We don't only talk, we don't only do research, but what's important, and I think not only for us, but for everyone working with AI, is that you also apply this to your solutions, to your products, right? So we have, for example, published guidelines for designers and developers that go really into the depth of how can I ensure fairness, how can I ensure explainability, what are the methods that I can use? And also open source kits, where we really work with the open source community to define metrics for fairness, or measures how I can ensure explainability. So that's the fairness and explainability open source toolkits. And then there's also a tool that helps in production to measure performance of an AI solution and the models underneath, and also explain recommendations and give you a heads up when there is unfairness in your data set or your solution, so that you can take countermeasures. So there are a couple of more, but what I wanted to say here is you need a sound set of principles and governance mechanisms to ensure trustworthy AI. You need to do research on a couple of the detailed areas. But for me, the most important thing is that you need to live these things, right? To really make it real and, make sure that data ownership or explainability is indeed implemented into your solutions, because only then you can be successful with trustworthiness from my perspective. So overall, if you look at where will trust in AI systems come from, I think in the first place, and that's probably nothing really new, it's applying sound and general safety and reliability methodology while you design, create, maintain, and operate AI solutions. So along the whole life cycle. And some of these methods we know kind of for ages, that we look at where does the data come from, how do we engineer a solution, how do we test and quality check a solution. Sometimes when a new approach comes along, you tend to forget the old and proven and verified ones. And my message here is, please continue to use them. There are a lot of them available that will help. The second thing is actually that we need to look at trustworthiness and acceptance of AI in an ongoing way, because the technology changes so fast. So we come up with new use cases all over the place. So the discussion is never ended. It's never finished. It's never done. So we have to look at, with tomorrow's new AI functionality and technology components, do we have to take different measures? Do we need different solutions to ensure trustworthiness? And then again, something that we should have known for a long time is we need good and standardized test and transparent reporting mechanisms. Test and quality management is equally important as a method that you use during the development of an AI solution. Ensure fairness. You also need to have the right test data to ensure fairness. Right? So it's not just a matter of having specific things, but also thinking about, if I want to represent the whole of society with my AI solution, then I should also represent the whole of society in my test cases. Right? And that's sometimes not done that much. Right? I think we heard that about the speech recognition and the voice assistance before in the panel discussion. Now, finally, another aspect that, from my opinion, is very important to all the technology aspects and the governance, is also that we should always keep in mind, especially when we have in mind that AI solutions should be for the benefit of humanity, which means for the benefit of people, that we also have to pay attention to the people who possibly use AI solutions or are possibly impacted by the deployment of, by the rollout of AI solutions. And that's why I want to mention an approach that some of my colleagues have come up with, coming from an automation perspective, not so much from an AI perspective alone, but from an automation perspective. But as we all know, right, AI can help us take over routine tasks, which means a certain level of automation. And that's why they came up with the so-called human-friendly automation approach. And the human-friendly automation approach is an approach or a methodology that basically looks at the extent of automation. And I'll go into those 4 areas that you see in a second. And based on the assessment results, it recommends organizational change activities that you should implement in parallel with the implementation of your automation or your AI solution, in order to minimize the negative impact on people who use or are impacted, or maybe even replace some parts of their job with the solution. And what they look at is, first of all, the level of automation. You can apply a scale from, I don't know, 1 to 10, for example, and say, okay, the lowest level of automation is that a system recommends an action to me, and I'm still completely free to decide if I want to take this action or not, if I want to do something else. Up to, let's say, level 10, where a process or a task is completely automated, right? Which of course may have a much bigger impact than if I just get a recommendation. Second aspect they look at is what percentage of the employees in a company are affected of the new AI solutions. Is it just 10 people, or is it 20%, or is it 95% of the company? Because that makes also a big difference. Third aspect is they look at the depth of automation, meaning how much of your workday in general terms is automated, right? Is it just the 5-minute task at the beginning of the day when someone categorizes your email, or is it up to 80% of your work time? It's pretty clear, I think, that the impact on you as a worker, as an employee, is much different. And then the fourth aspect, and that's actually one that I find almost most important or most interesting, is the question, how much did you as an employee, as a worker, as a person, identify with the task and really think this is the core of my job? And of course, the more you identify, the more you define yourself via this task, the bigger the impact of an AI solution or an automation solution. And my favorite kind of contrary example is if you think of your travel expenses, right? We all used to travel from time to time, and all of us need to do our travel expenses to get back the money that we spend. And if I now had a solution that 100% automated that for me, I would be the luckiest person on the world, probably, right? You could say, the level of automation is 100%. Every single employee who travels is affected. Yes, the depth of automation is not that high because I don't spend my days doing travel expenses, but I don't identify at all with this task. I almost had said an adjective that should not be said here, right? But in that sense, with such a solution, the organizational change activities that you need to define are probably minimal. But there are other things where you say, okay, where the depth of automation and the identification with the task is really high, then you have to take additional activities in order to make the implementation of your AI solution acceptable, right? So this is also an aspect for me that belongs to creating trustworthy solutions. Then kind of last but not least, we all need to engage and do this in an interdisciplinary way. And that's, for example, why I'm here today in Berlin as part of the Commission for AI of the German Parliament, where we took care that we don't only talk about politics or technology, but we had lawyers in the team, philosophers, sociologists, a lot of different professions and disciplines, because I think if we want to be successful with acceptable AI, we need to collaborate across all the disciplines, because every single one of us has a certain view on the world and a certain knowledge and skill set, and we need to bring this together to make it successful. And that's also why I find that groups like the high-level expert group on AI in the EU are so important, because they bring together people of even more countries, because I think the more we can also come to possibly a European way, or even, which I think is quite challenging, a worldwide view on this, because of the different ethical and value systems, the better, right? Because if all of us, single ones, companies, countries, create their own ethics guidelines, I think that will create too much chaos, right? So I think we need to work together and think in this multidiscipline way. And to close, I have 2 quotes here for you, where we come from, and that's a quote, and I didn't find when exactly it came from. It must be sometime in the 50s or the 60s of the past century, where Thomas Watson Jr., former CEO of IBM, said, and that was way before anyone talked about AI, our machines should be nothing more than tools for extending the powers of the human beings who use them. Basically the foundation for augmented intelligence from my perspective. And just this year, our new CEO, Arvind Krishna, said, we'll continue to model the industry standard for what good tech looks like. That's a bit broader than trustworthy AI. But for me, the trustworthiness of AI solutions to create acceptance fits quite well into this good tech aspiration and creating AI that's beneficial for humanity. And with that, thank you very much. And turning back to you, Nancy.
Yeah. Ooh. I'm sorry.
And I spoke too long.
Okay,
I
now
apologize.
We just wanted to wake everybody up, just in case, because it's been 3 hours. And Andrea, you are just fantastic. Thank you so much for the excellent information. It was really great to see how you bridge from engineering into the human aspects. That's making that real for us was really eye-opening. So thank you so much.
Good.
Also, thank you for sticking with us. I know you have to return back to Munich tonight. But thank you so much for being with us, and to everyone else. We couldn't be happier with this event. It was a sprint for us as a team. It is a difficult time, of course, during these times, because there is so much great content out there, so many events, and as you may know, everyone is competing for attention, but we couldn't be happier with the fantastic attention we got today. Both, we were live streaming this globally. Again, thank you so much to all of our partners, all of the speakers, Rudy, our moderators, our keynote speakers. This is really a very big joint effort. So we are all as a team. I hope the audience was liking it. We saw some of the great comments. So thank you so much for your good feedback and for the questions. And we hope that you will continue to watch us online as we are continuing this dialogue with you. This is all about co-creating and collaborating. And for us, for me at least, the question is now, what are you going to do now? I hope, because of the different aspects we discussed in this panel, you all at least one action item. You took away at least one action item. It could be to define what your purpose for AI is. It could be to get more education into this space. It could be to go back to your company and basically show other colleagues what you have learned out of these things. But it could also be that you engage with us, contribute, come have a dialogue. We are open, we are here, and we would be very happy to engage with everyone and co-create this future in which machines are just machines, and they are very early in that development. That we didn't want to go too much into the definition of what artificial intelligence is, but I love what Andrea put on the slide. Augmented intelligence, and all the people that spoke today have very clear opinions on the definition of AI. It is a technology that we try to make work for many, many years. We are still in very, very early phases, so nobody should be afraid, but that's a wake-up call for us to really engage and to collaborate. And that's the message I think we want you to take away today.
Yes. To add and to what Nancy already said, I agree with everything. It's been great content. I think that all of the fantastic speakers, really thank you so much for being part of it. You've all contributed immensely with adding your thoughts on the future of AI. I really like also the closing thoughts that now that we discuss what AI can do, now that we've seen it from the human side, the ethical side, what is important for us, for governments, for politics, policy making, for institutions, for corporations, how can we put the human back in this AI, but also what can we do next with this? And I think this is now the beginning of a conversation. I believe the Ambassador Darius Samsuka also mentioned it, that there needs a need before we even regulate to have this dialogue. And this is what we brought. We brought a dialogue, a discussion with really high-level experts who are top on their domain, and they can talk with us, and we can all together co-create this future in Europe and beyond. And yes, I'm really, really happy. Thank you so much, Nancy, for bringing this to Data Natives. It was a pleasure working with you and continuing working in the next events. And thank you so much for all of you watching. For sure, you will rewatch some of the content if you really want to, and I think you should stay connected and to re-listen to some of the great discussions and the great keynotes that we had. And one more time, thank you, Andrea, for the last keynote that you gave. It's very important what you're doing, and it's very important to distinguish between being a data company and selling insights and actually being a tech company for the people. So thank you so much.
Thank you. We are going to have a drink now.
Yes.
So wish you all the best. Have a fantastic evening. Stay in touch. You find us on LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, just because we're data natives, and you are too. So see you soon.
And on this note, we have a lot of other events coming up actually also for the conference, including Nancy's participation there too. We have 2 open forums coming up, one the 15th of October on climate change, one at the end of October on natural language processing, and then we have the big conference in November with two full days of content. So stay tuned and hope to see you there.
See you there. Let's humanize together.